too polished and it doesn't come off as genuine.
All right, we're going to get started. So, it's me, Brian. So, we're trying something new today. We are, I'm going to mute that TV. I'm here with my buddy Chris. Say hi, Chris.
Hello.
And we're going to watch football together. Now, the reason why this might be interesting or not is that I can amaze you with the lack of knowledge I have about football or sports in general. One of my favorite stories I used to tell people when they asked me about my knowledge about sports is when our kids were young playing soccer. I was coming from my youngest's game to the oldest game. Well, when they're little, they play quarters.
Okay.
All right. But normal soccer, I didn't know this at the time, it's halves.
Right.
So I'm walking back from the younger game, and my oldest has just moved up into that tier to where they no longer play quarters.
Okay.
And so I'm walking up, and all my friends are at the end, and all the other parents are at the end, and they're like, hey, down here. I'm like, cool. I'm like, hey, what quarter are we in? And the entire both our team and the other team, they all turned around and looked at me, and I'm like, I think I said something wrong. And all of my friends are laughing. So I clearly messed up.
That's funny.
But yeah, so that's how I learned that soccer has halves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And injury time and all kinds of stuff to go with it.
Yeah. So it's we're gonna see how we do. We'll ask some questions. I'm sure some of my questions will be those typical dumb questions. I don't know. I know position names and I know scoring, so I'm not like completely right.
Okay.
I know that a touchdown is 6 points.
Yep.
A field goal is 1.
3.
3. See. Okay. A terminology. The kick after the field goal.
Yep.
Or is that a field goal?
Yeah. No.
No.
It's not a field goal.
Okay.
It's
See?
a point after.
The point after is 1 point, or they can do the option for 2.
Yep. They can not kick it. And if they
run
get in
it.
the end zone, that's 2. Well, they can pass it too. But either way, if they get it in the end zone, that's 2.
All right, so we'll get this figured out. We are, obviously, because it's the NFL, we can't say anything. And it looks like Pepsi just changed their package.
Oh, yeah.
Thankfully, my antenna is still hooked up to the TV because this is probably the first time in, at least over a year that we've actually watched something on live TV.
That's the biggest thing I miss from going away from cable and dish and getting rid of all of that and just having streaming things is watching not so much the NFL because that's on regular channels, but college sports. Being able to watch that. I miss that a ton, but not enough to pay the prices to get it.
Well, and I was going to try and get the Rams game because I know that's your preferred
Yeah,
team.
that would be awesome.
But I'm like, oh, well, I'll just sign up for like the free YouTube TV, thing for this. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
But the NFL package is like $400.
Yep.
So I was like, well, sorry, we're going to be stuck watching. Who are we watching?
We are watching Minnesota Vikings at Carolina Panthers.
Okay. All right.
Both 0-3. They haven't won a game yet.
0-3?
Yeah. 0 wins, 3
And this
losses.
is going to be the better game to watch?
Of the ones available to us in this time slot, yes.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's 2 teams that I hate and I would be mad. Or the worst game in football is the late game. We don't want to watch that. It's terrible.
Well, like if we would have done this on Thursday night, if I would have been in town, I've got Amazon, so we could watch the Thursday night game.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see if there'll be a round 2 of this. Yep, that's gonna be interesting because we can't show you what's on TV because I think if this does get put up on YouTube or wherever, the NFL will scrunch that pretty quick.
I imagine they wouldn't be too happy with that.
Although, that'd be something for me to frame. I got a cease and desist letter from the
Nice.
NFL.
That would be kind of cool. NFL letterhead, see what that looks like.
I actually used to work for a company, and this is how bad the culture was at that company. There was a sales guy that worked in Omaha, huge football guy, right?
Okay.
And he was selling like 2 million, 2.5 million a year. So he was making okay money, probably making $80,000 to $100,000 a year.
Okay.
And this was a few years ago. But he somehow got the opportunity to go work for NFL Films,
Nice.
right? And everybody I won't say everybody in the company, but a lot of people in the company could not imagine why he would walk away from his $2 to $3 million sales list to go work for NFL Films. And I countered with, I don't know anything about football, right? And really, I've got somewhat of a curiosity about it. But if NFL Films called me and said, hey, Brian, how would you like to come work for us? I'd be like, hell yeah.
No doubt.
I mean, I don't even know football, but I would do it just because it would be something on your resume. And how many people do you know that have worked for the NFL?
Right. Yeah. That would be cool. There was a kid that I went to grade school with who I remember in like 8th grade, he got the brand new Michael Jordans when they came out.
Okay.
And he swore they made him run faster, thick glasses, nerdy kid. And then at our 5-year high school reunion, somebody told me he worked for Green Bay Packers as a statistician. I don't know if that's true, but that was the coolest thing ever. We're like, oh my God, that would be so awesome to do that. Even in not being a Packers fan, that would be cool.
So Air Jordans don't make me better at basketball?
They didn't make him fast. No, I don't know. I don't want to get any copyright infringements with Michael Jordan. But again, that'd be a cool letter to get.
Yes. Yes, it
It
would.
might have his signature on it. Free autograph.
Personalized. Chris, stop talking about how bad my shoes are. I remember when I worked in radio, this was after Jordan had retired, and one of the DJs had a pair of Air Jordans on, but they were like I don't know, casual Air Jordans. They were just like white. They weren't even high tops. They were just like, but they were still Air Jordans.
Right.
And he goes, hey, what do you think of my new shoes? I'm like, oh, those look nice. He goes, they're the new Air Jordans. I'm like, oh, those are the retired Air Jordans? And he was like, ow, man, that was mean. I'm like,
shoes are a crazy market. One of the kids that I worked with traded shoes and like saved up and bought shoes online. And he would wear them to school, but he was all worried about creasing them. So he
Right.
walked funny when he wore them and did all that. It's like, I can't wrap my head around that. Shoes are just a utility. You wear them for different things.
or if they're that valuable, don't wear them.
Yeah, wear them to school.
It's the same thing with like car people, right? You go to car shows, and there are those guys that trailer their car in, and then they roll it off. They might fire it up once or twice,
Yeah.
and then there are the guys that roll up. They drive it,
Yeah.
Cross country to get to the car show. Growing up, my parents had a friend that had a '68 Shelby Mustang.
Nice.
And I remember one time he and my dad drove it down to like Atlanta for a Shelby, like
Okay.
national Shelby show.
Yeah.
And then they got down there and they were able to take it out on the track. And so, of course, I mean, he drove it all the way down there. So,
Yeah.
of course, he's going to take it on the track. And he did. But they came back and they were like, you'd be surprised how many guys would just sit there with these beautiful cars. And they're cars. They're meant to be driven.
Yeah.
And they would just sit there and watch everybody else do laps. And I'm like, if I have chance, I'll take, the Ford Focus on a track if someone lets me. It's like, wait,
Yeah.
I get to do, 5 laps around the oval down in Atlanta.
Right.
And again, not a racing fan, but the opportunity to drive
Absolutely.
in a second.
Yeah.
I'd go rent something.
I'd ride a bicycle around it just to do it. I mean, I might not get 5 laps in, but I definitely take a bicycle to do it.
Oh, all right. So the kickoff has happened.
Yep.
They're moving. They kicked off. They let it bounce because they get it out to the 20, right?
25 now.
25.
Yeah.
Has that changed recently?
I don't know. Yeah, within the last few years.
Okay. So the thing that I'm interested in because of my day job, is that a Hail Mary? Oh, that looked like. Is that,
It was not a Hail Mary. It
oh, okay.
was
Well,
so.
he kind of just
Oh, there's a
launched it.
flag.
Pass interference, right? I mean, they hit the guy in the head.
Maybe
Okay.
the defensive back has just as much of a right to catch the ball as the wide receiver. We'll watch the
So,
replay and see what's going
which is
on.
really exciting for everybody else. But see,
He
kinda-
interfered with him coming back to the ball, maybe, but he didn't. Oh, he didn't look back. That's what it's going to be. He didn't look back to see where the ball was.
so they get the ball where he would have caught it,
I believe so.
or they get. We missed the
I believe.
announcement.
I think with pass interference, it goes to where they would have caught it, but holding is only like so many yards. We'll see where they put it.
First and goal. So yeah, they took it where
Yeah.
he was going to catch it.
Yep.
All right.
Which they were running a lot prior to that. I don't know if you were watching that.
Yeah.
But they were running, so that was a play action pass. So they faked like they were running. So the defense thought, oh, they're running the ball again. That's all they're going to do. And that brought their DBs and linebackers, their defensive backfield. I'll explain that to you later. It brought them up so they could get behind them with the receiver and throw that.
He still had two people on him though. So
He did. So it probably the safeties. It didn't bring the safeties up enough where he could get past them.
you know, as a player, that would be like, you know, it's not coming to you, but you still have to run as hard as you can out there to try and trick everybody that you're going to potentially get the ball.
Yeah.
It's just got to be exhausting.
Those cornerbacks and wide receivers are like deer. They just run and run and run and run and run.
Oh.
Touchdown. As a lineman, you watch some guys run like that, and you're like, I don't think so. That's not my bag. I will fight in the trenches and get all beat up, but I'm not going to run.
Fingers in the eye. Uh-oh. There's a flag.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can't hear the ref at all. I don't know if that's because of the TV. That was a good.
Yeah, he's still in the end zone. What's the flag for?
Oh,
Oh. So
Well,
see how he has
yeah.
his arm wrapped around him? That's holding.
okay.
You can't do that to block him. So that's why they would always teach us to get like in here and grab them in here so the ref couldn't see it. So like if you get under the chest plate of their shoulder pads, you can move them around and do with them. But you get those arms on the outside, you're in trouble.
Oh, I missed where they were.
Holding, I think, is a 10-yard penalty, so they would have been 10 yards back.
And they don't reset the downs.
Correct. Unless there was a defensive penalty that might reset the downs. But an offensive penalty won't reset your downs.
So recently there is a
You get the down over again. So the down that they used that scored the touchdown, I think that was first down. So then it was first down again just from further back.
Nope.
Oh, that's
interception.
gonna be a pick six. Is Kirk Cousins gonna get him?
Oh, nope.
Nope. Oh man, he read that like a book.
Was that the quarterback number 8 that got
Yeah,
drilled at the end?
yeah. I watched a show where they referred to him as the Nickelback of the NFL. That nobody will admit that they're a fan of Nickelback, but they put on these shows that are full of people.
Right.
Because Kirk Cousins is so vanilla, so bland, that nobody admits that they're a fan of his, except for whatever team he's been on. But that one, I mean, anybody could read that one coming.
I was
So
gonna say,
the-
I thought that was a little sketchy. There was a lot of people there.
Yeah, well, the defensive back just cut it. He saw the pass coming, so instead of being behind him, he cut in front of him and just picked his pocket. So your defensive backfield, right, is generally four people. You'll have two corners because they're in the corner, the outside of the defense,
Okay.
and two safeties, which are going to be generally in the middle. There's a million variations within that, but it's generally those four. Sometimes they'll go into where they'll have five defensive backs, and they'll call that the nickel because they have five, right? Nickel.
Okay. That's where I got confused because earlier you said nickel. He's the nickelback of, and I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
like,
No,
isn't that a
the
position?
band Nickelback. So they're back and they guard the receivers and running backs, whoever's coming out into the pass route, they guard them. But they also come up and run support and things like that. So that's why that play action pass works, because if your running back is getting past your lineman right up front and the linebacker's right behind them and is getting past them, then your secondary, your defensive backs, everything has a million names, they'll come up to make that tackle. So when you get them starting to push up and push up and push up, then your wide receivers can get behind them in that play action.
Now, the offensive line has more people in it than the defensive line?
That's just all of a choice. So
Okay.
there's all kinds of, you can set your team. There's certain rules. You have to have so many men on the line of scrimmage on offense. I think it's 7 have to be on the line of scrimmage. I might be wrong on that.
On the offense.
I'm a lineman, right? Because you have your 5 core linemen, then you usually could have a tight end and then a wide receiver somewhere on that line to get your 7. Yeah, I think that's right. And but your defense can do it however they want. I mean, they could set all in secondary. Like you'll see towards the end of a game where a team is trying to drive to a score to try to win the game, they might put only 3 linemen up front and then put the rest of their 8 guys back. So any pass that they catch, they're going to be able to keep them out of the end zone. It's called a prevent defense because you're trying to prevent a touchdown.
Okay.
Not necessarily that they gain yards, but prevent a touchdown. It's also said that a prevent defense also prevents you from winning because it gives them so many yards to
keep
continue
moving.
moving down the field, and if there's enough time, score a touchdown. But
You're willing to give them a little bit so you don't get a lot.
yeah, and there's defenses that do that. They're like a bend but don't break defense. They'll give you yards, so you can gain a little, but they're not giving you those big dynamic plays. Like if he caught that long bomb pass, that's a huge change, right? I mean, they're
Right.
moving like 40, 50 yards down the field. And those are huge momentum shifters and all kinds of stuff. So you want to try to avoid those. Yeah, that was terrible.
Oof.
Yeah.
The quarterback tried to do something with it.
And they look so little here on, but he's, a big guy.
Right. Yes. Yes.
It's just everybody's a big guy out there.
Yeah, that's why the big guys are ginormous.
Yeah.
So from a technology standpoint, there recently was a college, I don't know if it was college type women's basketball tournament.
Okay.
And they played, the whole court was a display, a direct view LED floor
Below them?
below them. So it's
my
like playing
gosh.
basketball on the top of a TV.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And the company that does it, so it's color, so like it's actually sensitive to where like when they bounce the basketball, the display can react to it. Which not during the game, but they were showing like some stuff, and I did some looking into it afterwards. But they showed it to where like you put it in your gym, and then you can have them. It's almost like a video game, right? You run to this corner, run to that corner, run to this dot, run to that dot, shoot from here, and they can do different practices, and it's all drawn out on the
Right.
floor. But the really cool part was especially for colleges, there's a lot of multi-purpose gyms. So you go over and say you want to play pickleball. You push a button on the wall, and the pickleball lines get drawn out on the floor. You want to play basketball, you push a button, basketball lines get drawn on the floor, and the basketball hoop comes down. So you don't have, like, you remember in elementary school where they're like just tape lines everywhere.
Yeah, the
'Cause
volleyball lines and the basketball
Yep.
lines. And yeah, okay.
yeah, so but this way they just draw them out on the floor.
That would be kind of cool.
I've heard they're trying to do that with football, to where they're trying to embed like fiber optics to where, like, when we're watching on TV, you can see where the first down is. But that you
More
could
so
actually,
than the yellow line that they're using
so you could actually see that.
in the stadium.
Yes. But the problem I see with that is before the game, before we started recording, you were talking about
Yeah.
the injury with the AstroTurf.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know enough about it to say that Aaron Rodgers' injury was specifically because of the turf, but I know that NFL Players Association is certainly making some waves about that, and individual players about why, like, I think soccer only plays on grass, and there's certain teams that, why is the NFL not going back to grass where it's shown to be so much better? And it gives more than what the artificial turf does, even the fancy turf that they've got in those NFL stadiums.
Right.
So that's kind of interesting. 'Cause so much science went into figuring out that turf, but it still doesn't have, as good a surface as your yard.
Maybe not my yard. My yard, my yard is lumpy and hard as a rock right now. I'm just, I mow it. I consider it a lawn. But outside of that, I'm not. That's another thing. I've got some neighbors that are huge. Their lawns look immaculate.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just beautiful.
Mine's like that.
And it's like me. I mow it. I trim it. And that's pretty much the limit. Although I was pretty pleased. I pulled up the other day. We got some rain recently. And I pulled up the other day and I was like, the yard doesn't look that bad from the street. Just don't get up on it and look at it too close.
Yeah, mine does. It's shaggy as heck. And I mowed it a couple weeks ago thinking this might be the last time I mow it all year because we've been so dry. And nope, I'll be mowing it a few more times.
I actually we had some people come over one time, and we were all sitting on our front porch because we've got a really nice front porch. And we're sitting there, and the guy looks over at me and goes, I'm really impressed at your yard. And I'm like looking at it like,
Okay.
He goes, the fact that you're not watering it, you're just letting it go dormant, you're saving water, that's good for the planet and everything. I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm doing. It has nothing to do with the fact that watering.
Yeah, I just don't care about my yard.
Right. Well, I mean, I always joke with people, I'm like, grass in your yard, people like protect it, but grass in your flower beds or the cornfields or something like that, now it's a weed. So it all depends on whether you want it there or not.
Right.
And for me, it's grass. The less grass I can have, the better off I am.
Yeah, that'd be great to AstroTurf my lawn.
I've
I
actually
guess it's
seen
not
that.
AstroTurf anymore, just turf.
I've seen some hotels that have little patches of that out there. Makes it easy to clean up after your dog, I would guess, but probably you might need to hose that down.
Yeah, we watched a movie. Oh boy, it's been 6 years ago on a turf field, and we had chairs and stuff sitting in it.
Yeah.
And you sink down into those black balls, but then when you like pull your chair up as you're folding it up, they start coming back up to normal.
I was shocked at how bouncy it is when you walk on the turf. It seems to be springier, or at least the stuff that I was on.
It's all rubber balls.
Yeah.
So.
Because my kids used to do a summer track and field camp.
Okay.
Which, I mean, if you knew my kids, they don't have any interest in sports either.
Yeah.
But when they were little, they loved it. And I remember my youngest was, like 5 or 6, right? And they're down on the football field. And they're like, okay, let's run from one end of the football field to the other. And he wouldn't. And then all the kids would run back, and he would run there and back. Because he just liked, and then they're like, well, let's move out onto the track. And he'd take the outside lane and just even as a kid when he's little, he's just like, let's go run. I'm like, okay, I'll stay behind you. And I'm back there like, you know, I'm 6'2". I'm taking one step for every like 12 of his.
Yeah.
And he always liked the distance just to go.
Good for him.
Now, not so much. But that's the one that I don't understand is that was a running play. And they always seem to want to like go up the middle where like everybody is. There's this wall of people. And I realize there's supposed to be a hole, or they're hoping there's a hole.
Yeah, that's what you're trying to do is like it's so as an offensive lineman you want to put a hat on a hat, right? So you want to put one of your linemen on every person there and move them out of the way and cause just a crease or a hole for the running back to shoot through. And then almost on every play the running back has to beat one man on his own. But so you have to look at the game in a long-term kind of a way. So you're going to smash up the middle because you're trying to wear out that defensive line.
Okay.
So that at the end of the game, when maybe you're throwing passes, they're not as fast or as quick as normal because they're a little bit gassed. They're just beat up all day because you got those big hosses on the offensive line pushing them around.
Well, there you got through.
And like your run game is indicative of how well you're going to be as a team. If you can run the ball, you're going to win games.
The passes are pretty, but it's the run game.
Right. Well, but there's so many factors into throwing a pass, right? I mean, the quarterback has to put it right in this certain area. The receiver, while running, has to catch it. There's a lot of variables where some guys are better than others at that. And whereas run, it's just, the snap to the quarterback, the handoff, and then run. And, did you see his head bounce?
Yeah.
He used to play in Minnesota too, Adam Thielen.
Are they hitting him harder because he used to play there?
No, maybe, but they liked him. But that's just coming over the middle. Those safeties are just, that's what they love.
He wasn't moving.
Yeah. Yeah, hit him with the shoulder, clean hit. So he's a little bit of a sprinter, so they're trying to throw him out there like it's kind of like a screen, so the other running back's going to block for him, and then he's got to beat one of those guys to gain some yards before those safeties and other people start
Everybody else
coming
comes
over.
up. Well, that's like when they were kicking off after the touchdown.
Yeah.
You've got the receiving side. They're all lined up, and immediately they all start running backwards.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I mean, I know you couldn't like just everybody be back there because then they'd kick it.
Short.
Well, they're not going to kick it short because then you'd get the ball. Well, no, that because you have
They
to
could get it. So it's
if
an
it
onside
touches the
kick.
ground.
No, if it goes 10 yards, then the kicking team can get it, and then they have possession.
Okay.
So you could have two.
So you have to have
possessions in a
enough
row.
people up there to make that not happen. But you all know you're most likely running backwards to go get to protect whoever's catching the ball.
And it used to be when I was playing, we would do what's called a wedge, and so you'd get like different layers of that wedge where you would run back towards where the guy's at the ball, and then you'd line up in that, so you'd have one in the point, and then you just kind of
stack
at them in a wedge formation and just go forward, and that would just those runners coming down that just really beat up people, so they outlawed that, trying to
Well, and I would
get
think
away from those concussions, because that's when you're running full speed and then running into a wall like that. I mean, that's where a lot of concussions come out of.
I'd also think though that the receiver's probably not able to run as fast because they're behind a bunch of.
Yeah, but the theory is you're breaking out that all those, you're knocking all those guys
And
down.
then they can shoot out of the
Then
middle.
he can find
or,
a crease
right.
or a hole just like on offense, and then shoot out through it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I used to every once in a while I'd watch. We'd have friends that had like a Daytona party or something like that, and I would always love it when they would go down and they like flip the car on the side and they would start talking about the technology or
Yes.
something about that stuff. ESPN, I think when I was traveling, they used to have a show. It was like the Science of Sports or something like that,
Okay.
and they would talk about curveballs, both in like baseball, but also in soccer. And they would be like, who can curve the ball the most? Or they would have someone come in and help a basketball player with where they catch the ball and shoot the ball, and how to teach them how to do it faster. And like that part of the sports, I've always found fascinating. The technical, but
Yeah.
I'm a technology, sciencey guy, right?
Right.
But like sitting and watching the game, maybe it's because I don't understand it, so it's not as interesting for me. But it's just never been like, oh,
But that's the part about sports, right? Like, obviously, I'm a Rams fan. I'm neither of these teams, but I like the sport. So that's why I'm trying to listen to you and watch the game because I'm interested by both.
so do you root for somebody in a game like this, or
Yeah,
do you?
generally, like for me, I do. I pick, like, I watch the NFL or the Netflix series quarterback, and like I want good things for Kirk Cousins. You watch him; they're 0-3 this year. It's like I hate to see him go 0-3 just because I like that dude. And there's fewer Minnesota fans around us. They're mostly Bears, Packers.
Yes.
So it's good to have a team that will beat them just because you're tired of them.
Yeah, it is definitely. There's a few, but not many Vikings fans.
Yeah, there's a few, not near
Yeah,
as many
yeah.
as Bears and Packers.
But like at work, well, at work, the guy that owns the company is a huge Kansas City fan
Yeah,
and has been for like
right.
going way back. And so a lot of people are, and that was like the second office we opened up. So headquarters in St. Louis, first branch office was Kansas City. So obviously that's big within the company. But we do have offices in Michigan, and so like Detroit, I believe, is doing pretty good this
They
year.
are. They're doing really good
And
last year
and
this year.
so there's been a lot of that back and forth of
Yeah, and Detroit's winning with the Rams' former quarterback, Jared Goff, who
oh
wore number 16 as a Rams, but this is not a Jared Goff jersey. It's a Jaworski jersey. See it up there, but, yeah,
Heaven
I
forbid.
can't find jerseys in my size, which just blows me away because those linemen, like we were talking, they're bigger than I am.
right.
But I found this in a pawn shop in Destin, Florida. We were down in Florida, and the family wanted to go to a Goodwill or something. Across the street was a pawn shop, and this was hanging up. And I was like, "That's crazy."
What just happened?
They
There was a whistle.
blowed the play dead, but he still hit the quarterback.
Oh, okay. Because I mean, the quarterback was just like standing there,
Right.
and the guy came up. And, I mean, which should have been a clue
Looks
to
like
the
they
guy.
just called the false start, not the other one.
Oh, who moved? I didn't see anybody move
Oh, he's on a blitz, so yeah, there was nobody there
to pick him up.
yeah.
One of my favorite. I used to have a neighbor, huge Iowa Hawkeye fan. Right, we're in Iowa, so we don't have a professional sports team. So everybody seems to love the Hawkeyes
In our area of the state.
in our area of the state. I was gonna say,
I
yeah.
don't know. You get up towards Ames.
My
that
my
area.
oldest went to Iowa State for a few years, or for a few semesters, and someone in a dorm across from him had an Iowa Hawkeye flag in the window.
Yeah.
One of my coworkers graduated from Iowa State and is a huge Hawkeyes fan. But then again, he grew up in this side of the state. So, but it was funny. One time we were coming back, I think it was from a soccer game for the boys when they were little, and was listening to the radio, NPR, and they had just done like this segment on the Iowa Hawkeyes, like 3 or 4 minutes on the Hawkeyes. And we're driving down the alley, and my neighbor's out, and he's like, "Hey, how's it going?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah." I'm like, "You're not up at the game?" Because they were usually at the game every weekend. And he's like, no, not this time, da da da. And so I started like repeating the stuff that I heard from the, about like how the game was gonna go, what it was looking like, and all this stuff. And he was like completely confused. And then after our short little conversation, we drive off, and my wife's like, "That was not me. That was not nice." And I'm like, "What?" She's like, "You've just like melted his brain. He has no idea that you just repeated what you heard on the radio like 5 seconds ago, and he's thinking, how does Brian know all the
Yeah. How
things
does he know all that inside stuff? He doesn't know anything about sports.
sports? What happened?"
Oh, that's funny.
Oh,
But that stuff can be, I don't know. Sometimes they talk just to talk, and it doesn't even make, at least as I'm watching it, it's like, oh my gosh. Sometimes the announcers are that way too, where they're just talking like they're just making crap up as they go.
well, having worked in radio, and I did work for an arena football team. I was their sound guy, and I sat next to their in-house, the announcer.
Okay.
But then, I also worked with a hockey team, did all the remote broadcasts, and so I hung out with the sports people. And we did high school play-by-play. Not me. I set it up,
Yeah.
got it going, and then the two guys, the color commentator. And you're right. I mean, they're there. They have to talk, right? It's like when I did talk radio. All the DJs were like, when I get too old to do, top 40, I'm going to come down there and do talk radio. And I'm just like, it's different.
Yeah.
They're like, what do you mean it's different? I'm like, well, like you guys talk over a song, you might do a little long bit here and there. I go, but down in talk radio, you got
Hours.
like 43 minutes, depending on your commercial and news load, every hour that you have to say something.
Yeah.
And it's just a different world. But with the announcers, we're back. But with the announcers, the thing that always drives me crazy is whoever's winning, they're just like, oh yeah, that was nice.
The lineman
Almost caught it.
that is a lineman's dream. Because, I mean, if he's got any wheels at all, he had a chance to score on that.
So he got there and just got
Put your hands up.
just put a hands up,
Even
and it hit him in the hands too.
Yeah. But even if he wasn't getting beat, he had gotten the edge here. But even if you're beat, that's what you're taught as an offensive lineman. Get your hands up when they're passing. And so, or as defensive lineman. So as an offensive lineman, you're taught to punch them in the stomach to bring their hands back down.
And now we're doing a field goal,
Yep.
which, I mean, it seems like they need to like maybe narrow those, because I mean, do people miss? I mean, I've seen some incredibly far field goal kicks. The kickers are way better than like back in the 80s when.
Absolutely. I mean, everything is, right? I mean,
Right.
just as we come along with science and everything like that. But there's a competition committee that's looking at that. We were talking about the wedge earlier and how they outlawed that because of concussions and things like that. And I was listening to another podcast where they were talking about, how long until there's no special teams at all. So where you're not kicking field goals and things like that, or it looks drastically different. But they did make the change. So the point after that we were talking about, after you score a touchdown and you kick it to get the 1 point.
Yeah.
So they moved that back. It used to be like on the 3-yard line. And that's where you would, if you were trying for 2, you would start from the 3-yard line. But if you're going to kick it, it goes back. I can't remember what yard line, but considerably back, like to the 25 or something like that, to make it like a 30-something yard field goal. So they do look at that because, and touchbacks have changed, and there's some different things that you can do within that. One, they're trying to protect the players, but 2, to make it competitive.
Right.
Because you're right. They're kicking crazy field goal. Like last night watching the Iowa game, they kicked a long field goal that when I was playing, nobody would have even dreamt of kicking something that long. And now kickers are money from that spot.
Meaning they make it regularly?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I was like, I mean, they get paid?
Yeah. Nope. That means they're money. That means they make it consistently.
It's not, yeah. Well, that's the last time I was even, I guess, followed any team was like back, like the Bears. Wasn't their kicker like Butler or something like that?
Oh boy.
I mean, that would have been
Like back in when they won the Super Bowl?
yeah, I think it was like that far away. I mean, that's and I'm sure I only watched then because everybody around here was watching because it's a Chicago team, so they don't win very often.
Was it Butler? Was that his name?
I
His first name was Gary, because there was a trivia question about what player scored the most points for the '86 Bears, or it's '85 was the season, '86 when they won the Super Bowl, and it was their kicker that scored the most points. Was it Gary Moore? Mohr?
I'm trying to. I'm searching it right now because obviously I don't know, but well, wait. It says
Who was the Bears kicker in 1985?
Let's see. You cheat.
How am I cheating?
You're not. I was typing. It keeps on saying Devin Hester, but
No, that's their returner that
okay.
should be in the Gary Anderson.
Gary Anderson. I don't even know that. Who's Butler?
Wait a minute.
Butler kicker.
This is just a list of kickers. What in the heck?
Butler was also part of the
1985.
'85 team. He set a rookie scoring record of 144 points on 31 field goals, and all of his 51 extra point attempts and kicking 3 field goals in the Super Bowl. Kevin Butler. See? Oh,
He's number 3. 6 foot, 215, played 13 years in the league.
that's a long. Well, do kickers play longer?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to say, I just found out yesterday during a Freakonomics podcast that most football players, it's like 3.7 years, like which is just under that's their first contract, right? 4 years is generally the first contract.
Yeah, if they're drafted. I think free agent contracts are year to year, but because even after the draft, they will call kids and be like, "Hey, we want you to come out and play for us," and they sign a free agent contract, which is usually like the NFL minimum, and so then they get a chance because they start their camp at the beginning of the year with like 90 some guys on the team, and then they have to winnow it down to 52. And they can have so many on the practice squad, and I don't know how many that is, but it's not a lot. It's like 5 maybe.
Do people from the practice squad ever move up?
Absolutely. So like if there's an injury or something like that, they'll bump somebody from the practice squad up, because then they're in practice, right? They're in shape. They know
They know the plays.
they know the system, they know all of that stuff.
Yeah, and I think the minimum pay is something like 400.
Yeah,
Something?
like 405,000, I think, which sounds like a lot of money, but you got to move to a different city. You've got to
Well, and you're only going to get that for 3, maybe 4 years,
right
on average.
Yeah, unless you hit it big somehow or something like that, which doesn't happen all that often. So yeah, you got to plan for your future. You got to yeah. I mean,
Well, and
it's not like you're consistently earning that amount of money
for
a
40
career.
years or something, or 20 years, yeah. Well, and then part of that podcast was they were talking about the Players Union finally put out a survey, and they ranked the facilities that they get. Which one of the players that was interviewed was like, we're measured on all these statistics, right? How many they run, what they can, all of this, right? But the players or the owners and their facilities aren't ranked. So they did this, and it was all done anonymously. And I think they said something like there was 2,000 players in the league, and they got something like 1,400 of them to respond, which is really good.
It's a decent sample size.
And then they ranked them, and it was all stuff like, how are your training facilities? How are your meals? How do they treat your family on game? What's travel like? Do you have to have a roommate? Which blows my mind that these guys are traveling, and they have to have roommates. And
I would guess having a roommate serves a double purpose, right? Because then that guy's not going out partying or doing something the night before, because he has a roommate that's also then accountable for whatever that guy does. So it's like a buddy system,
right,
right?
right.
To keep him out of trouble, not necessarily a money saving measure.
Well,
Although with
it
some
was
teams it could be.
right, exactly. And it was some teams did it, some teams didn't. You know, they were talking about who gets first class because on some teams the coaching staff sits up in first class, and then there are other teams that they put the big guys up front because or the starters.
Yeah.
You know, because I can't imagine being some of these guys that are like 6'4", 400 pounds, sitting back in economy class.
So that makes me laugh. So I played for a local NAI Division II college, and they would put all of us linemen in a van, so we didn't have to sit on the bus with people, which led to some interesting situations, as you can imagine, with a bunch
College.
of college players in a van driven by coaches that had played the year before. So
Oh, so they were like 1 year out of being in the van as a passenger.
some of them were different positions, so but haven't been on the bus as a passenger or whatever.
Right.
So they didn't quite carry the cachet of like those older adult coaches. So we had a lot of fun on those bus rides or van rides. Yeah, so I would definitely agree with making the case of putting your big guys up in the front in first class.
Well, and it was
Even now, riding in a plane, it's like you just
do you upgrade for the exit?
no, but we did. Somebody swapped with us coming back last year on a vacation, and oh, that was nice. I had actual leg room, but still, it's just the size of the chair. Like,
Right.
It's like I'm sitting like a lady, keeping my legs closed,
Knees
instead
touching.
instead of sitting like normal and being able to relax and kind of spread out. So it's like 4 hours of just being crammed into a seat.
Yeah, and I'm 6'2", and I've sometimes I will get the upgrade, and it's or sit in the very first row of the economy,
Yeah.
because it usually has a little bit more space. You're at the behind first class, and it's almost, and I fly pretty regularly, but it gets to where it's kind of like I don't know what to do with all the space, right? It's just like normally what I try and get is I try and get aisle, because then I can put a leg out.
Yeah. Until the
Which-
drink cart comes by.
Yeah, until the
and then
drink
it's
cart comes by,
and
right.
Your leg can't, again, you got to sit like a lady because your leg's out. And then that cart, I've had that
Yeah.
happen where it banged into my knee. And then, it's like you can't stretch it. It's
Right.
like you're just
Right.
sitting there like, this hurts.
I always tell people though, because recently I was flying back from Texas, and there was a tornado in the Quad Cities, so we got diverted.
Okay.
We were over Des Moines, couldn't land in Des Moines because they couldn't take us. So we had to go back to Kansas City, and they had to like slam the plane into the ground because it was so windy that the pilot came out. He's like, "Hey, I'm sorry about that landing, but it was so windy, it was hard to get the plane to come out of the air." That
Touchdown.
was nice touchdown by the Vikings. He was
Yep.
scrambling.
Our boy Kirk Cousins to JJ, his favorite target because he's good.
Tall, got good hands.
Yeah, in fact.
Although are the gloves cheating?
Well, no, they're all wearing them. But it's definitely different than wearing your bare hands.
Well, I know back in the day where you had to. Although that one he caught with his chest.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, I mean, the gloves are advantage, but when it rains, the gloves are worthless. When I was playing my senior year, it seemed like it rained the first 7 weeks of the season, so it was just always wet. And so I went out and I bought some of those actually my dad went out and bought me some of those sticky gloves. And they were great for like 2 plays because once they got mud and stuff, it just stuck to it and it made them slicker.
Yeah.
So I was a center, and so I went to snap it in the shotgun, and it just rolled straight back on the ground, just like rolling down. And
So is that a fumble essentially?
It's just a bad snap. I don't know that qualifies as a
Well,
fumble, but
I mean,
our
there's
quarterback,
no do-over.
yeah, I mean our quarterback got it, got the ball, and but he lost a bunch of yards. It was obviously terrible, right? So once the coaches got done yelling at me, I took the gloves off and I just threw them because I was so mad. My dad came over, hopped over the rail of the stands, and then went down and grabbed him because he had paid so much for him. He didn't want him to just sit there and be forgotten.
Right.
And so
Because they
after the
would have
game,
been.
yeah, but after the game, I remembered him and I go looking for him. I'm like, oh my God, somebody stole my gloves. And then I saw my parents after, and he's like, take better care of these. I'm like, okay, Dad.
He's gonna get you the little straps like you had when you were a little kid.
Like
so they
mittens.
just
Yeah, run them through. That's awesome.
Oh,
Just have a little yarn up to the
Right,
shoulder
right.
pads and down.
I like it. It's a status symbol. It's
Oh,
like
yeah.
just like your mouthpiece. You spit it out and it just hangs there.
Yeah. Yeah, I was able to keep my helmet after my senior year, and it's in my office, and the mouthpiece is still connected to it, which drives my wife crazy because
it's probably
it is
nasty?
nasty. Yeah, I mean it's all dusty and it looks gross anyway, but it's a mouthpiece sitting on a cabinet.
Yeah, I played like flag football in elementary school,
Okay.
and I remember getting the mouthpiece where you had to like boil it
Yeah,
and then
that's what it is. Yeah.
and then bite down on it. They look a lot nicer nowadays, a lot more comfortable. Although it's funny
Yeah.
some of the designs that you see on them.
Right. And sometimes they don't. You can still custom fit them like that, where you put them in the hot water and mold them to your teeth. But I don't think a lot of these guys do. I think they keep them in the basic as it comes out of the box.
They look softer. I mean, I know you're just looking at them that maybe there's a little bit more. Because I remember those seem to be like really hard plastic. And maybe if it was more of a foamy stuff where they're biting down on, there's actually cushion.
Well, yeah, but it's been 30 years, longer than that, playing junior high flag football. So,
Right.
yeah, I'm sure
The technology's
the rubber silicone technology's come a long way.
So the two teams look pretty good together because they're both 0-3.
Yeah. Everyone expected more from Minnesota. It's kind of a shock that they're this 0-3. Carolina, I don't know a whole lot about them. What's going on with them? I haven't played fantasy in a few years, so I'm kind of out of the loop of specific people and things like that.
Well, there's so many different fantasy football ways. Like I've seen one where you pick boxes and it's done off the score. It has it's like the Monday night every game, and then it's like you add the score together and it's whatever the last digit is.
Yeah, I think those are more like your betting apps and things like that you can do those kind of things. But yeah, you can do them a million different ways. My nephew ran the league, and he made he was the commissioner of our league, and he made some changes partway through, and you can it was through the ESPN app, so you can message, but everybody can see the message.
Yeah.
And we all, even though it was a good change and we all wanted it, we just gave him so much grief, like, oh, okay, you're gonna win now because you made the change.
Well, of
Maybe
course, I'm
that's
the
why he's not doing
commissioner.
it anymore.
Yeah, we've got one at work, but it's pretty tough to get into because they have a set
Yeah.
group, and then every once in a while there'll be like one or two openings, maybe, and they go very quickly.
Yeah, and this one was just a free friends league. It wasn't like for money or anything
For bragging
like that.
rights.
But there's a big Chiefs fan in my office, and he's a gambler too, and he runs a big. Watching highlights of
The fumble,
Eagles,
they're
Commanders.
probably beating the crap out of each other at the bottom of that pile, right?
yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Trying to get the ball.
What was I talking about?
Fantasy football.
Yes. But it's like where every week there's a winner and you earn money. It's like a $50 buy-in at the beginning of the year, and you win considerable amount of money at the end if you're the winner. But I don't know. I'm just averse to gambling. So I work hard for my money. I don't want to just give it to somebody.
Outside of that lottery ticket.
Yeah. Yeah. 'Cause that's a way bigger payoff than. Because
Right.
I don't know enough about all of this to like realistically think I'm going to go in with some kind of advantage in a fantasy league and beat somebody.
Well, I know a
But
lot
it
of
was fun when I did it. I enjoyed playing it because you knew all the teams, you knew how guys were doing
right.
because they were scoring you points or not, and if you were going to pick somebody up or
Well, I
injuries.
there's the gambling has gotten incredible. And again, to each his own. I don't have an issue with it.
Yeah.
But I always find it funny when there's ads. Like there's a couple of podcasts. I like listening to Conan Needs a Friend. Great podcast. And very funny. But they do an ad for one of the gambling apps. And it's always, and it comes off as very fake because they're like, oh yeah, it makes me enjoy the games more because I've got skin in the game. And it's just like,
But I know some people that's absolutely true for them. Like they, like I mentioned before, I'm not a fan of either of these teams, so I can sit and watch this game. But other people, if you got money riding on this game or
yeah.
on a parlay within the game or something like that, you're definitely watching it on a whole different way.
Maybe my problem is growing up, one of our neighbors was a bookie. That's how he made his money.
Nice.
I mean, legitimately, he he did something and then he got injured at work, so he couldn't work anymore. He was on disability, so he was a bookie. So he used to, and I don't remember much about it anymore, but he had the neighborhood kids would just hang out at his place because he had hockey, or he had air hockey, he had pool table, foosball table, all of this, so like, Saturday nights everybody was going down to Bill's place, right? And and I remember, like, at one time we were in conversations about stuff as I got older, and he explained the juice and and the whole concept behind it. And I mean, he did not live large by any measure of the. And I'm sure he worked for a bigger bookie who there was something like that, but he made a living at it, and it was all illegal. Yeah, super illegal. But yeah, it was funny, and we never saw any of it. Like as kids growing up, I would sit there and I talked to all the neighborhood kids. Some of them I'm still in touch with, and it's like, did you ever? And it's like, no. I mean, there was never like people stopping by, or I mean, he was on the phone a lot, so it was all based off of the phone.
Yeah.
But we never saw any of it. Oh, and the other thing, which was a huge thing for us kids, especially me growing up, because second oldest of 6, we didn't get pop at home. If we did, it was like 2 bottles of pop, and you split it evenly amongst all 6 kids. But after you were 12, you would get your own pop, your own bottle. And so it really wasn't. It was kind of bogus because once the 6 kids, once the 4th kid turned 12, well, then the last 2, whatever age they were, they got their own pop, right? So my younger brother grew up basically having his own soda. But anyway, so he had stocked fridge of flavors of like he would have the strawberry and the grape. Ooh. And the so it was just like a kid preteen kid heaven because you could just go down there. And even when we got into high school, it was just like, you guys want to play pool? I know he had a really nice table. He had a 7-foot table, and growing up, I had 2 friends that had pool tables, and the one grew up playing on an 8-foot table. So he could play okay on a 7-foot, but on the 8-foot table, he was amazing. Yeah. And then my other friend, Jay, they had a 6-foot table. And again, he could transition to the 7-foot table, but on the 8-foot table, all the lines were off.
Yeah.
And I was never good, but I could play equally bad on all 3 tables, so I was consistent.
That's what they say, consistency.
It's kind of like it's the same way I play golf. I get a 7 or an 8 on every hole. It doesn't matter if it's a par 3 or a par 4.
Yeah. Well, it's a good thing for Travis Kelce that he got this commercial that he was just on because he's dating Taylor Swift. Good for him.
Supposedly.
No, they're dating. Have you seen the videos of the wives trolling their husbands on now that he's dating Taylor Swift, he's going to be famous?
Okay. No, I haven't seen that.
Oh, my God. It's hilarious because these guys get so upset because and a little bit rightfully so. Travis Kelce's made his own name.
I mean,
in
what
football.
position does he play?
Tight end.
Oh, okay. So that's not a normally famous position. Is it?
It can be. I mean, there's
usually
tight
it's
ends, but he's very marketable. He's a good-looking guy.
Okay.
So he's been all over on commercials and things like that air during football time.
Sure.
So the guys watching sports and stuff at home, obviously he's a household name for them. And now for the Swiftie wives, he's a household name for both of them. But it's just funny how upset these guys are getting. Like, he was famous before. It is, they're getting all upset while these women are laughing at him because they knew that, but they're just picking at him.
Well, I was talking to a Swiftie earlier this week, and they were talking about the dating situation. And I guess she was interviewed one time, and they're like, "Do you ever not write a song about your relationship?" And she's like, "No." She's like, "If you're going to date me, you just got to know there's going to be a song."
But I mean, she's a songwriter, right?
Right.
I mean, she writes all the songs she sings. So what do you write about? Your life.
Exactly.
I mean, you can't write make-believe and be as good as she is.
Well, and the other funny thing is the amount of influence that she has. And that was something that the football players were talking about, how, you can play a game for 3 hours and completely change the tone of a town, whether you win or lose, and we were talking about, because Taylor Swift's been in the news, not only for her dating, but also trying to get people to register to vote. She was pretty open about who she was supporting in the last presidential election. And there's people on the other, on the other side of the political aisle that are just like, well, that, she shouldn't be doing that. That's not her position, and it's kind of like free speech type of. Anyway, the fact that they're trying to shut her down, and it's like her fans literally caused an earthquake. Like, there was a concert and it registered on a Richter scale somewhere, and it's like that's the level of fame that is mind-boggling.
But it's duplicitous to say she shouldn't be out there talking, because they certainly have celebrities that are talking for their cause too.
Right.
So it's like that isn't even.
Well, and the people on TV are basically celebrities that get paid to talk.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just like, on one hand you're like, yeah, it'd be nice if athletes and actors and musicians like wouldn't talk about their things or whatever, but they're people too. I mean, they have a stage. If I had a stage like that and I could use it for something that I thought was important,
right?
Because my wife and I watched that. Was it Taylor Swift Americana or whatever, where she was like debating about jumping in to like a local election in Tennessee. And it's like, yeah, that all makes sense. I could see if you have that kind of say. It's easy when you're just a normal dude and nobody cares what you say, to be like, oh, I would never do that. But if you had the opportunity to make a difference, I mean, that would be hard not to.
Right. Well, especially because, I mean, whether you're wrong or right, you think you're right. And you think you're doing a good thing. Regardless of what side of the thing is you think your side is right. And, it's as long as they're as informed as anybody else is. So whether it's the guy down the street or some famous person, they get called in to talk about, like you said, they get called in to talk in front of Congress, and they're like, well, here's what I think. And it's like, and you are, but.
Well, just being a celebrity doesn't mean you aren't informed on the issues.
But sometimes one of my YouTubers, John Green, Hank and John, I don't know if you know who they are.
Oh, I don't.
They do they're the Vlog Brothers, and they're both famous for different reasons. John has written a number of books that have been bestsellers, and then John, his younger brother, is just like was one of the first big YouTubers about science and stuff like that.
Okay.
And so they have this one podcast where it's basically letters to each other, where it's like, hey, John, da 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 da, and they just talk about random stuff, right? Yeah. Well, John, for like the last year, has been down this rabbit hole of tuberculosis. And so they're not all tuberculosis, but he's really gotten into the tuberculosis movement and didn't realize, biggest killer, by the way, of humans, tuberculosis. It's not even close. Like war, you add up every war, and tuberculosis is like twice, 3 times as many people.
Wow.
But there's a cure out for tuberculosis that they discovered or came up with in the 60s. But still, like every year, like 1 million people die from it. So he's been advocating and stuff like that. And he got to talk in front of the UN recently,
Okay.
and he did a whole thing on that, how nervous he was. And and it's just like, I'm just like some guy that makes videos with his brother on TV, but he has done the research.
Right. Well, that's like Ashton Kutcher, right? Like he's big into that human trafficking and stuff like that. So he testified before Congress, but he's made himself an expert and
Right.
out there working to do what he can
That
on
was
that topic. You know, it's like,
that was one of the things I was talking to a friend the other day, and we were talking about like Elon and all them. Be like, hey, let's go to Mars, and it's like there's some issues out here on the planet Earth that maybe those it'd be nice if those billionaires would, rather than we've got 3 billionaires making rockets. It's like, can one of them? I don't know.
cure cancer.
Well, not even cure cancer, or I was thinking there's a new TV show out about a guy. He's ex special forces, and he like goes and helps and tries to fight human trafficking. And I'm like, if you're a billionaire, maybe you hire a couple of ex special forces people and you send them around the world to break up some cartels or something.
Yeah.
Was that another
No,
interception?
Kirk Cousin got sacked as
Oh.
looks like a linebacker or somebody blitzed, completely untouched.
Oh
right
my
up the middle.
goodness. Oh, and then like clotheslined him.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't do anything wrong, but it's like that line. Come on, man. What are you doing? He's standing right there. You know he's coming.
Wide open.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm sure the quarterback is like not looking at anything like directly in front of him. They're scanning the field, right? Looking for.
So they talk about that sometimes as like what distinguishes good from great quarterbacks. And some of that is just feeling pressure. You're not looking at your lineman in front of you because then you can't see what's developing downfield because you're not throwing where the receiver is, you're throwing where they're going to be. So you got to be able to feel that pressure so you can like step up or you can step over. It's just little things that will, get the guy to blast past you instead of being able to light you up. So in that pocket presence where they can feel that kind of stuff, but that dude was right in his face. That's why he couldn't throw the ball away. He couldn't see where to throw it even because that dude was just coming at him. But you see that with great quarterbacks. Tom Brady's a good example. He's not super mobile, but he can just take a step or two, or could take a step or two, move out of the way, and those guys would go by. As hard as it is to say something nice about Tom Brady, but you see those quarterbacks that feel that pressure and they just like shuffle step over and away from it, and just know
Because
what
the other
it
guys are
is.
coming with such speed that they can't shift.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's like running full out, right? And then you're gonna
Your
like
target
move
moves
to your
6
left.
feet.
Yeah, it's like really hard to do, and that's why they fall down and slide and do everything else. But yeah, it's just those subtle movements can be, unless your pocket is just completely collapsing, and then you just got to bail out and run like crazy. But
Throw it into the stands.
if you're outside you got to be. So your tackles are your end offensive linemen. And so that's called a tackle box that like goes back. And if a quarterback scrambles outside where that began at the beginning of the play, then the quarterback can throw it away. If he just throws it away and there's no receiver anywhere around, then he'll get intentional grounding. And so you'll lose the down and lose, I think it's 15 yards.
So he just has to throw. Well, I see a lot of times they'll throw, and they're clearly throwing it away because their guy has no chance of catching it.
Right.
But it goes near him.
Yeah. Like it'll hit by his feet or something like that. So it's
Go
at
over his
least-
head a little bit.
Yeah. So you can make the case that, he was throwing at that receiver, just, it was a bad throw, whatever else. But once they get outside, and it might be even the hash marks, I can't remember, but once they get outside that tackle box, they can do whatever the hell they want with it. They can just chuck it right out of bounds. They might have to throw it past the line of scrimmage. Yeah, it's like the Vikings just can't catch a break this year.
They haven't been very good for a while, though, have they?
They were good last year.
Oh, were they?
Yeah.
See, shows you what I know.
And that's kind of the knock on Cousins. He's never won a playoff game.
There was one of my other podcasts I was listening to. It was all about, would you rather be a big fish in a small pond or a small fish in a big pond? And they were talking about there's a basketball player that I guess has won like 3 championships, but nobody knows who he is, other than for the trivia of the knowledge. But then you have someone like Charles Barkley, who's very famous but never won a championship.
Yeah. Like 3 NBA championships?
Yeah, and it just like he played for a team, and played in the game for a few minutes, but then he got traded right after that, and then like another team picked him up like right at the end of a season.
Okay.
And it just so that he was filling a needed slot on a team that was already doing really well.
Yeah.
But was not like a key player or anything.
Right.
And they were just like, would you rather be the guy with the 3 rings or Charles Barkley, who's famous but no rings?
Both.
Wow.
I don't know.
Or?
One of my roommates in college, his dad played on the 73 Colts and had a Super Bowl ring. And he was an offensive lineman, and he was just massive. And so I met him after a game once, and he had the Super Bowl ring on and shook my hand and just like crushed my hand. This dude was, and that was back in the 70s when those guys weren't that big, and he wasn't that tall, but man, he was strong. And I don't know, he had a Super Bowl ring, right? I'd never heard of him before. I mean, it was a famous team on that Colts team and stuff like that with Bubba Smith, who was an actor and things like that. But man, to have that ring, even if you're the ball boy to get a ring, that's something.
One of my coworkers has a World Series ring from the Astros.
Okay.
And the day I met him, he let me try it on. And I didn't put it on all the way. And he goes, no, you can put it on all the way. I'm like, no, I'm worried about it getting stuck. He goes, no, that's fine. And I'm like, are you sure? He was like, yeah. And I put it on, and it did get stuck on my finger. And he just looked at me calm as you could be. And he's just like, oh, I'm getting my ring back.
Yeah. If I cut your finger off, I'm getting it back.
But yeah, he worked in the booth. He ran their sound system.
Yeah.
But every season that he's worked for them since hasn't been a good season. So he's always like, I don't know if I'm a jinx but he's down in Houston, and he also does work with both football and baseball teams.
Okay.
Because he's had that relationship for years. So, but yeah, we work together. He tells some pretty funny stories.
Yeah. I mean, that would be cool. Like just any association to, well, that's like the kid that we know that's in the Hawkeye marching band, what a great experience. If you're not, like for me, I'd want to be a player on the field, right? But the next best thing would be to be with the band.
Well, and his dad was in the band too. His mom and dad were in the band. So the stories that they tell are right up there with the football team stories.
I mean, you go to the bowl games, you experience all that stuff. Like when my son was in band, I'm like, dude, like, sports isn't going to be your thing. You don't like them, but this is a great way to go to experience all that stuff. And of course, that's something that matters to me, not to him. But yeah, that's awesome to like be somehow involved with a team that wins like that and get a ring.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just better to be
it's a big ring too.
Small fish in a big pond and get a ring.
I guess it depends on what you're after, right? Because I mean, he's got the experience and he has great stories, but nobody's going to come up to him on the street and be like,
"Yeah, my God, I know who you are." Yeah, but part of that is, I'm 50, so my answer is going to be different. If you would have asked me when I was playing, it would have been to be starting on a team, ring or no team, right?
Right.
Just to play in the NFL would have been the experience. But now as I'm older, it would be like that championship ring would be the big thing. But still, it would have been cool to,
to be on,
have been on an NFL team, even just to play in like that preseason, like I was saying before, where you start off with that 90 people, even if you got cut, it's like, I was there. How many
Right.
people can say that?
Exactly. Exactly. Well, that's like, I did talk radio in the Quad Cities, real small market. My show was on the Saturday mornings, right? I occasionally got to fill in, and I got to co-host the morning show for a while they were looking for new hosts and, and stuff like that. But, when I was doing it locally, people would recognize your voice and you get recognized. And then when I got out of it and started doing what I'm doing now, I'd still go around and people would hear me talking and, it'd be like, hey, hey. But I haven't done it. I haven't been on the air in 21 years. But talking with like my coworkers now, because they all know about my history, not because I'm constantly bringing it up, but because it's relevant to what I do. Like, so I work for a technology company, and we design TV studios, radio studios,
Right.
podcasting situations, classrooms. Pretty much anything that has to do with technology, we do that. So people would be like, "Hey, I need to do a podcasting studio. Can anybody, can I run some ideas by anybody?" And I'm always like, "Yeah, go ahead. Give me a call or whatever." But it's still that whole, just like, you were on radio, and one of my other coworkers was on the Bob and Tom show. He was one of their singers,
Okay.
and I'm like, and he's like, "Whoa, man, you were on radio?" And I'm like, "Dude, you were on a nationally syndicated show." I was on this, but his thing is, yeah, but you had your own show. I was part of somebody else's,
Right.
and I was like, so it's all like, what are you after, right?
Yeah.
I do presentations now as part of my job. I go around and help educate architects and interior designers about our industry. And I've done it 22 times this year, and I've got 3 or 4 more. So this will be the most I've done in a single year. And I was with a salesperson doing it last week, and afterwards he was like, "Oh, that went really well." I'm like, "Yeah, I thought that did." We're kind of like doing that post presentation debrief, and he looks at me and he's like, he goes, "How many of these you've done?" I'm like, "Well, 22 this year, and I'm approaching like 80, since I started doing this 3 years ago." He's like, "Do you still get nervous?" I go, "Oh, every time."
Right.
I mean, I remember when I was on radio, Saturday morning, 6:08 was when the news would end, news and weather to be over, and it'd be my time to, my theme song would be playing.
Your time to shine.
Right. And my microphone would be off, and my finger would be right by the microphone to turn it on, and sheer and utter panic would just pass over me. Like, what am I going to say? Not for like the next 3 hours, but for this segment.
Yeah.
I've got 9 minutes, 12 if I push it, to talk before I can go to commercial break. And it's like, because the rest of the week I wasn't prepping for that show. I was producing
Yeah.
for another show. I was, being music director for an oldie station. I was writing and cutting commercials. So it's not like I had all of this prep time.
Right.
And so, yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, because you don't want to recycle somebody else's stuff. You want to be unique.
Well, and it wasn't because the guy that I produced for was a heavy politics, Rush Limbaugh type of show. And that's just not me. I mean, at the time I've got a degree in political science, and I like politics, but the problem is I see politics a lot like people see football. I'm paying attention to be like, "Oh, they misspoke there," or, "Oh, what? Oh, okay, I see how they've left themselves an opening here,"
Yeah.
So that's how I watch politics. And he was just, and we had disagreed on a lot of stuff, but politics wasn't my, like, I couldn't get on the air and be like, "You're all idiots,"
Yeah.
because even then when I was little, and even more so now that I'm older, if someone like comes up to me and is like, "No, you're wrong. Here's why you're wrong," and they explain it to me, I'm always open to, "Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't think of it that way.
Right.
Let me reassess and when you're doing politics on radio, you can't reassess.
No.
If you say it's blue, for the
Yeah.
rest of your life, it's blue. Otherwise, you will just get torn apart,
Right.
which is one of the problems with talk radio and politics in general. But,
Exactly.
you know,
Yes.
yeah, it's so back to that big fish, small fish thing. It's funny how, yeah, I mean,
I think it breaks to where you're at the time, right? Like when you were doing radio, what you thought about big fish, little fish would be different than now. You have more perspective on it. You're not doing it, so yeah, I don't know.
yeah, I
And
had
it depends on what thing you're talking about and where you're at.
well, and radio is died. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've got friends that still work in it, and I feel bad because I don't listen to any of them. But like YouTube, podcasting, all it is radio.
Oh
What
my
was
gosh,
that?
I don't know.
So that was like a
Threw it like straight up. It might have been tipped.
I would say the Vikings threw the ball and it was like this lob ball up in the air. No one was even close by.
Yeah.
Do you feel guilty now that you're making the Vikings lose?
I'm not making the Vikings lose. I have no impact on this game whatsoever. They don't even know I exist. Does it get tipped? Oh, he got hit right as he threw it.
No, I thought it was like
Can of corn.
if your arms and going forward, they can't.
That's only if it's like a fumble. So
Oh, okay.
if his arm is going forward and he's tackled and so the ball just kind of flops right in front of him, then that is counted as a incomplete pass.
So you can jump
But
on
if he's just like in the motion of bringing it back or something like that and he's hit, then it's a fumble. It's a live ball. Man, he just has all day to sit in that pocket. Cousins is just like running all around.
So it's 7:10 coming up on the half. No cool halftime show.
No, isn't it Usher going to be the halftime show for the Super Bowl this year?
I have no idea. We'll see what
Or
he
the big
what he
game?
does to make everybody upset because I feel like there's always something.
Yeah, nobody's ever happy with
No.
the halftime show,
No.
which is like just enjoy this. It's just entertainment, people.
Yeah, I mean it's may not be your favorite band or whatever, but it's usually a superstar.
Right. Or maybe somebody who's not super relevant but has a ton of hits.
Yeah. Someone that used to be a superstar.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I remember
But it's still like, oh, I know these songs.
yeah, Prince was a good show. Was it last year where it was all like Dr. Dre and Snoop and
No.
Was that 2 years ago?
A couple years ago.
Was it? It shows you how long it's been since I
'Cause that
watched the
was
Super
in
Bowl.
LA when the Rams won the Super Bowl. Go
Okay.
Rams. No, last year was Rihanna.
Oh, right.
And
There
they
was
were
a whole
complaining
controversy
'cause
about her
she-
baby bump.
Yeah, she had a baby bump, and it's like, okay,
It's
yeah,
like-
a woman can't be pregnant
It's like
and still apply her
my partner
craft.
went to work pregnant. I mean,
Yeah.
why can't Rihanna? I mean, it's not like now. I could see if you're an MMA fighter, maybe you know if you're pregnant, maybe you should take some time off during the pregnancy. But
Yeah, no. Everybody's gonna complain about something. Sometimes it's me.
well, they don't tell me how far it is. How far is his kick? Oh, he's from
56. He just said
and
it.
right up the middle,
Yeah.
pretty much.
7-13 going into half. Yeah, man, the Vikings. I don't know. I mean, they got a whole half to go, but man, their stats are way better. So those 2 turnovers.
Yeah.
See that rush yard differential, that bodes well for the Vikings because if they can continue to rush, they're only down by 6. So, a touchdown and they're in the lead.
As long as they
But when
keep
you can run the ball like that, you can rest your defense while you're marching down the field because you get lots of plays when you're running the ball, and you can do some good stuff.
that is a huge stage, or the Fox.
Yeah, it's probably not that big. It's probably like
No,
all
it's
green
all
screen.
it's all probably like I doubt it might not even be green screen anymore because they're replacing green screen with direct view LED walls because they can do the same thing,
Right.
but the actors and news anchors can actually look at it and
See
see
it.
what it is.
Yeah.
And that's one of the became really popular. Or what is it? The Mandalorian was the first company to do that.
Gosh,
Or first
that's how bad the Broncos are. The Bears are winning.
what? I saw the Steelers were losing, so I've got some friends that are not gonna be able to.
Ooh,
Oh, your Rams are killing the
up
Colts.
20-0. How about that?
Well, and the Colts are two wins. Have you been watching it on your watch? Have you been paying attention?
No, I'm gonna bring up the app now because I want to look at some of the stats. Goes right to it because it knows.
Well, your phone's trained.
No, I selected my favorite teams.
Oh, yeah, I did look up when I was looking up the Rams game this weekend to see if we could watch it.
2 rushing touchdowns and 2 field goals.
It now thinks that Rams is my favorite team because it was the first sports team I think I had ever searched for on my phone. So up on the corner now, there's a little spot where it's like, "Do you want to know more about the Rams?"
Always.
Oh,
Yeah, this is gonna be a tough year for them.
for the Rams?
Yeah. They're just trying to figure out. They spent a bunch of money to win that Super Bowl and then just weren't able to maintain all the personnel and keep it going.
Isn't that fairly? Well, I guess it's not typical because there's a number of teams that have repeated.
Yeah, it's kind of like how you want to go about it, right? Do you want to go build your team slowly and consistently? So over time, you're building your team so you have a mix of some of those veterans that know what to do and the young kids to stay under your salary cap. And then, or do you want to spend a whole bunch of money and have one really good year? I mean, it's gambling, right? On how that's going to work
Right.
out either way. And sometimes it's the coaching and their scouting staff and their general manager and things like that that can find good talent lower in the draft so they're not paying as much for people that are going to be out on the field consistently producing. I mean, it's you can bog yourself down if you start to think about how much that there is involved in putting a field on the team for pro sports, right? Because you have people watching those college games of this kid can fit into our scheme here because of this scheme that he's in. And then sometimes you draft who you think is the best player and they're just not fit for your scheme. And you were talking about before how that life is 4 years, right?
Right.
If you don't get traded to another team or put on waivers and picked up on another team that's going to be good, you could be NFL quality caliber talent, but still not get to play because you're not in the right system for you.
Right.
And so they're looking for those guys that are going to fit in their system, right? Because it's cheaper. If you can get a guy in the 7th round or get a free agent that you're going to pay them the minimum instead of millions, you're paying them only hundreds of thousands, then you can get more bang for your buck out of that. And that's kind of an argument too. Like with baseball, have you heard of Moneyball?
Yeah,
and
I've heard of the
Skids and
movie.
stuff like
Yeah.
that. So where they look at, okay, this guy per dollar provides us so many runs, and you look at that, you build your roster that way. You can kind of do that in football, but there's a lot more variables going on because it's not a one-on-one competition. It's 11 on 11. But so they use some of that, right, to who they're going to pick, and then it all depends. Well, who's available? It's like we really want this guy, but our pick isn't until here, so we're not
Right.
going to get that guy. And then somebody
Trade
has
for it or
right. You can trade for it, or you can find the next best thing, right? Because you're not going to be able to get up to that round to get that guy. Maybe somebody has some character issues they're worried about, some trouble came up last minute, something like that. Somebody's dropping through the rounds. You can take a gamble on that, on what kind of person they're going to be, if they're worth drafting and where they're drafting and stuff like that. and that's just to pick the team, right? Then you got to find a coach and assistant coaches, and
It's that culture. You got to find that culture fit.
absolutely, it's all culture, right? I mean, you see that with those teams that are losing teams for a long time. I'll talk my personal opinion about the Rams when they were in St. Louis and they had Jeff Fisher as a coach. He's an 8-8 coach. I mean, you look at his career, that's, in a 16 game season, he's going 8-8. And that was the culture of the program then, was to be just good enough. They never could push past that next level. And you bring in a coach where that's not where he's accepting, and then they start to be a better team, and but that culture invades your whole building, right? Like,
Yep.
you've got to change the culture of the secretary or intern that gets coffee for people and
Right.
makes copies. Like, they've all got to be on board and excited about the program too, so it bleeds into everything.
That's the same in
go.
business.
Yeah.
When we're hiring people or whatever, we're always hiring for culture fit, because we can teach you what you need to know.
Yeah.
But you have to come in, and there's a lot of people that are very talented and they just don't make it. And we're a small company that I work for, but I'm in that level to where I've hired and fired, and it's like, they don't get what we're trying to do, and you wish them well, and
Or their personality just doesn't fit, right? They're
Yeah.
abrasive, and you don't have the kind of people that would deal with that well, or it changes the culture of your office just by
one
their
negative
personality.
person can destroy a team, and so no, that I remember there was one particular engineer that I worked with, and he just it was constantly like, well, I'm not putting my signature on that project, I'm not, and it's like, well, if it's wrong, fix it. Well, I was like, no, you can throw that whole thing out. This is a technology company,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, if all of the gear is wrong, get rid of the gear, use the amount that they sold as your budget, and redesign it from the ground up. And I even, I showed him, I did it a couple of times with him, and was trying to really mentor him. And he's just like, I'm like, see, this will work. Yeah, but I'm still not going to put my name on it. It's like, dude, you're not putting your name on it. We're a team.
Yeah.
The salesperson sold it. The engineer is going to fix it. The project manager is going to develop a plan to get it installed, and the installer is going to put it together, and the programmer is going to program it. It's not you, and he, he lasted about 6-8 months, and then it was like, okay.
Yeah, and he was probably unhappy too. I mean, it was a bad deal all around.
Yeah, and it was just, but I mean, his resume was great, some really good experience, and he was knowledgeable. But again, he just, I remember the first or second person I had to let go in my career, and the company we work for, it's like, we hire smart people, we trust them to do the right thing. There's not micromanagement. Right, which is like everybody's dream. Well, but at the same time, there are very few companies that I've worked for that are staffed up to micromanage people. It takes a lot of people, which means a lot of money to micromanage. But anyway, you have individual managers that can do that, get guilty of that.
Yeah.
But I remember he was just like, I'm not. He was an installer, and he's like, I'm not comfortable with the amount of flexibility I have within my role at a company. I'm like, you don't understand what you're supposed to do, or your job is to go install stuff, make sure it works, and then come back and do everything safely and in a timely manner. Yeah. And he's just like, yeah, I need more direction than that. And I tried for a long time, and then finally it was just like, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to babysit you. And you mentioned self-starters. One of the last guys I hired, I met him for coffee, and we were just chit-chatting about sound processors and stuff like that. He's like, well, what's your favorite, digital sound processor? And I'm like, well, I like this particular brand, and here's why I like it. And he's like, oh, I never heard of that. And we were talking about, and after the coffee, I liked the guy. I mean, I was probably wanting to hire him anyway. But then it was like 3 or 4 days later, he calls me back, and he's like, hey, I found one of those units you were talking about on a shelf here at work. and I, got into it and, started figuring out how to program it and, all this stuff. He goes, "You're right. This is amazing." And I'm like, "Did you just teach yourself how to program this over the last couple of days?" He goes, "Yeah, we're a little slow. So I just, pulled it off the shelf and figured it all out and everything." And I just called up our HR department. I'm like, "You need to send this guy a letter right
Yeah,
now."
immediately. Oh my
Because
gosh.
he
Yeah.
just taught himself because he was curious, right? And it goes to that culture thing that we were talking about
Yeah.
earlier.
That's huge.
And now he has my old job. So
Yeah, we're making changes in how we do things at my work across the state. And, some of those veteran people that have been around for a while are just hard to get on board with some of the changes. And it's like, I understand your objections and probably some of them I agree with, but I mean, it's going to happen.
Right.
This is the wave of what is happening, and it's a change from how things have happened in the past, but it's like,
Well-
welcome to the new world, man. Everything's changing. We're exploring data, looking at things, and making changes where it needs to be.
I remember when you and I used to go and do junior high school, college, or career fair.
Yeah.
And you and I would always go. And that was kind of like my whole pitch because my career is such a niche thing
Uh-huh.
that, it's you talk about it and people are like, "What do you do?" Yeah, and it's even hard to explain.
Yeah.
So my tact with the eighth graders that we were talking to was always, about that constant change, that constant learning, because it doesn't matter what you're doing. Every career or job that I'm aware of, things are changing and you're having to adapt to it. Doesn't matter if you're driving a dump truck or picking up garbage, because now our garbage men, for a long time, now it's a robot arm that picks up the garbage.
Yeah.
They're not riding on the back anymore,
Yeah.
So, there's change everywhere.
Yeah.
And I know as you get older, it gets harder physically to change.
Yes, but we've also talked too about our generation, the changes that we've gone through and have had to adapt throughout.
Yeah.
The training we got in high school and college was almost obsolete by the time we graduated because when I was in college, computers were just word processors
Right.
essentially, and that's the internet wasn't a thing. My senior year, I was typing a paper down in the computer lab, and there were some kids huddled around a computer, and they were like, "We're talking to this person in Russia," and I'm like, "Okay, whatever," And now it's like the internet. I just look to see about the Rams game, right?
Right.
It's like I don't even think about all the stuff that I have access to now that was just nobody could have imagined that when we were coming up.
Yeah, I was talking to someone the other day because we do a lot of video conferencing, and stuff like that. I'm like, could you imagine working without Teams or Zoom?
Yeah.
It's like, how would you? I mean, I travel quite a bit already, but my travel schedule would just be astronomical.
You would never ever be home. You would
Yeah.
travel all the time.
Yeah, or we'd have to take a pass on those projects or I'd be completely reliant on people gathering that information for me.
Writing it down
Which
in
is
a letter
not-
and mailing it to you.
Which one of our good friends still I work with, he every time he sends an email, he goes, "Well, I'll send him a letter," and I'm always like, "Do you need a stamp?" Because I mean, he's 62,
Okay.
but he still refers to email as sending a letter, and he prints out a lot of his emails and puts them in files, not just the important ones, but I'm like, dude, I think I have a notebook in my bag because when I'm like someplace, it's easier for me to take notes there than it is on a computer or a tablet. But it's like it's just funny the culture change,
Yeah.
And I remember being in college and they were talking about the paperless office, and I'm like, it's still not there, but it's closer.
Well, because of the people that have to print their emails because
Right.
they're important. And
Right.
yeah, I have some coworkers like that. We had one that just retired a few months ago, and well, I guess it was longer than a few months ago, but she hated computers and everything computer related. And it's like, it makes our job so much easier. Why
Yeah.
are you not taking advantage of what's here.
Well, and
Just stubborn.
we still don't use computers. I mean, we're still back to your comment about college. They're still basically word processors. I
Yes.
mean, for a lot of what we do, it's word processors. It's getting more and more, but like, oh, hey, here's a spreadsheet. Well, somebody put that spreadsheet together. And we're getting now to where there is more and more the data's out there and the computer's putting it together into graphs and charts and stuff for you. But
Well, we're working on a new system at my work where the computer's going to do some of the work for us. It's going to auto-populate some things. It's going to complete some forms. It's going to be so much better than the current one we have now, where we can even pull data out to better make decisions and stuff as we go, every step of the process and all of that. And I mean, it's kind of exciting to be involved with that and how we can make those changes and make suggestions. And I mean, the programmers, I'm sure they cuss my name because it seems like I'll give suggestions and they're like, oh, okay, we'll put that in the parking lot. It's like that's a higher level function than they're ready to get to.
the parking lot, you want your ideas in the sandbox, not the parking lot.
Yeah, well,
Parking lots where things go. But no, actually, most good programmers love that type of feedback.
oh yeah, it's just I can see his wheels turning over Zoom. I can see his wheels turning of like that's a good idea. How do we put that in place? So he puts in the parking lot to think about
Right.
how he's going to make that work with the existing system and the other systems that I wanted to integrate with and make things easier.
Yeah, I'm currently beta testing some software for a large company that if I said the name, everybody would recognize it.
Yeah.
But and it's like, but I'm not like a programmer. I've programmed in the past, but that's not my current role. And I'm not a designer really anymore. I'm kind of in this weird role. But they're like, yeah, but you have that experience and your input. One, we know that if we ask you, what do you think of this? You're gonna be like, well, I think I'm not one to hold my opinions back. But they're like, but we also need that input too. We're talking to other programmers because that's all. Like, I'm always like, wow, what would a programmer? I'm like, oh wait, I'm one of a dozen people that's currently testing this software out for them.
Right.
So it's not all on me. I'm giving them some of my ideas are probably stuff that is more cosmetic, organizational, to whereas, someone else is in there talking about, specific settings and, how their computer's dealing with sound and, and all of that stuff. But, it's a weird because you're talking to the programmer and sometimes they're like, huh, okay. Because they're programming, they're not out there using it. So it's like you need that outside person to kind of go, nah, that's not as useful as you think it is.
Yeah. And our committee that meets with them every other week is made up of every position in our organizations,
And that's smart.
Because some things where I'm like, I don't know, that's not important. Somebody else is like, that's the most important thing I do. And you're like, all right, well, then maybe that's important.
Well, maybe we should move that. Yeah. I don't know where to prioritize that.
I'm going to mute myself for a few minutes and let the adults talk.
But that's the smart thing about having a team like that, right? You have the
Yeah.
team of teams type of the strategy, and I'm fascinated with like the lean process and the Kaizen, to where you're in there and it's like, okay, we have this like issue that keeps popping up. How do we fix it? And if you get a bunch of engineers in there, it's going to be an engineering solution. But if you get the branch coordinator and the warehouse person, and all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, it's a lot easier to fix, or we need to fix it in a different spot than what we thought we did.
Yeah, the problem's not where we thought the problem was. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. So you saw how close they were to that end zone?
Yes.
If he would have been tackled in the end zone, that would have been a safety. And the other team that tackled him there would get 2 points.
2 points. Okay.
And they would get the ball again. But they would punt it to him. They wouldn't do a normal kickoff. They would punt it to him from further back. So a safety is a huge deal. But he got out and got a first down.
It's amazing to me. But that guy's got some long dreads.
Yeah.
And I just don't see how the helmet could be comfortable with all that hair.
It's probably just a bigger helmet to fit all that hair.
Now, does the quarterback have a microphone speaker?
He is a speaker,
A
not
speaker,
a microphone.
okay.
So the coach can talk to him up until, oh man, I want to say it's 11 seconds because they have so much time in between plays. So see the yellow numbers
Yep.
that are counting down? They have that much time in between plays. So right now the head coach can talk, or whoever has the microphone into the quarterback's head can talk to them until there's so many seconds left, and then they can't talk anymore.
Who turns it off?
It's like an auto turn off
Okay.
thing, I think.
So it's synced. Yeah, that would be something that like we would set up.
Yeah.
I mean, and we've done some football stadiums, some soccer stadiums. The company I work for, I don't think we've done any NFL, but we've definitely done some like Big 10, Big 12, college.
And there's also one player on defense, usually your linebacker, that has the same deal. So
Oh,
the
okay.
coach can talk to him. So they used to call plays with hand signals and things like
Right.
that. They can call them through that microphone. Or speaker, I guess, not a microphone. Good Iowa kid making good. TJ Hawkinson. Couldn't reel that in. Our Iowa Hawkeyes are known as tight end university because they consistently put real quality tight ends out there in the NFL.
Which is, I mean, again, don't follow it, but the Hawkeyes don't seem to do well. I mean, they're kind of that, back to your St. Louis Rams, they kind of seem to be that 8-8 team, or
Yeah, I mean,
it's not a superstar team.
no, and they're not going to contend for a national championship, but their coaches don't recruit your 5-star, 4-star athletes. They don't recruit those kids. They usually get the 2 and 3-star kids, bring them in, and then make them better through their coaching process. That's what they're well known for. They've asked like other coaches, hey, if your kid was going to play college football, where would you have him go play? And a lot of them will say Iowa because of the level of coaching, and they'll make them better than they are. Now, Iowa's not, like a college football hotbed, and they're not in the national championship conversation and things like that. But they normally put forth a pretty solid team that's going to go to a bowl game every year, which is important.
Well, they also have a good fan base, so that helps them
They
get
have
to
an
bowl
excellent
games
fan base,
too.
yeah, because they travel well and
Yeah.
all of that. Yeah, because I mean the farmers can't do anything
In the fall, anyway. We're not all
in
farmers.
January. No, we're not all farmers, but it's in the winter, so they're not out farming, so they can travel and take their vacations and warm locales and watch the Hawks win a bowl game. But they put a lot of NFLs into the tight end. They put a lot of tight ends into the NFL. They put a lot of players. Not a lot are like your first, second round draft picks, but they're those quality picks that are playing in the NFL, regular players. Occasionally there'll be a few superstars that will come out, but a lot of teams are built like that, where they have those, solid players, and Iowa's a good team. Like usually they throw out on Facebook or Twitter some numbers every time, but for as like you're saying, they don't win those games. They put a fairly decent amount of kids into the pros from
Which, if you're
considering their overall record and
if you're a
reputation.
player, do you want a championship or you want a better chance of getting into the pros? I guess it depends on your level too.
Yeah, in fact, they were talking about this in the Hawkeye game last night, but a former Michigan quarterback and tight end came to Iowa through the transfer portal, and the quarterback got hurt. But they were talking about the tight end came because Iowa has such a history of putting tight ends high in the draft and doing that he could, become a better tight end, get his name out there, and move up higher in the draft.
Through the portal. That's funny. He came through the transfer portal. It sounds like a library book.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of relatively new where kids are able to move around from college to college.
Without losing, like,
I'm not
I mean,
an expert on all that, but I think that's how it is they don't lose that year of eligibility anymore. They might, though. For a while, it kind of started where kids were getting their 4-year degrees because they're redshirting. You know what redshirt means?
yeah.
So when they redshirt their freshman year, sometime along their college career, so
Means they can't play, right? Or they don't play.
and so that means they still have their 4 years of eligibility, even though they practiced and did all the team activities. They're eating on the team training table. They're lifting weights with the team. They're doing all that kind of stuff. So getting better. So you'll get a better 4 years out of that kid because of that redshirt year. So so they might graduate college after 3 years. So they might have a year of eligibility left, and maybe they want to go get their master's somewhere. So then you could move. Russell Wilson is a famous person that did that. It kind of started that snowball rolling down the hill. He was at North Carolina State, and then he went to Wisconsin to start work on his master's or something. But he was able to play at Wisconsin right away. And Wisconsin was a good team, needing a quarterback, and I think they went to the Rose Bowl. He took him to the Rose Bowl in that year. So you get an experienced quarterback or any position person.
Ooh,
That's a fumble.
he was dribbling the ball. Wrong sport.
Yeah.
Did he keep it?
I don't know. We'll see a replay. He's got to take 2 steps, I think, or make a football move. Oh, they're not going to show us the replay.
That's because he must have kept it. Because
Carolina figured it was a not catch, so they went ahead and ran it quick. That worked to their benefit before anybody could replay it. But now we'll see it. If he actually gets a catch here. Yeah, that was a fumble. But he recovered it right away, so you can see him with the fist,
yep.
and he punched it out.
Yep.
Yep, he got it back in that pile. I think that's where the refs lucked upon the right call. But watching it in slow motion is obviously a big difference from sitting
Well, and it's amazing the money that the refs don't make, or how they're like almost all of them. This is like their weekend job or a side job,
I think they make pretty good money.
Do they now?
I think they make like 6 figures.
Oh, I always thought that a lot of the refs were like, they had some other career, and this is.
I think some of the college refs are like that.
Okay.
What does an NFL referee make?
It probably depends on which referee you are.
About $205,000 a year.
You could eat off of that.
I don't know if I could. Why didn't it mute this?
Stop! I don't care.
Google, just chat. So yeah, and I think they get to like keep their miles for flying around and stuff like that. Because there was a scandal where refs were doing something with their miles a few years ago. I can't remember it all now.
Like selling them?
No, they were double dipping somehow into that system. Like downgrading their ticket so that they got more miles, or there was something they were doing. Like, I think they get like a first class ticket, but they were doing something with it.
That was pretty amazing. The quarterback was running through a line, scrambling, and just drilled it to somebody.
Throwing it on the run.
Yeah. Because he'll just go right up the middle.
Yeah, see, so he felt that pocket presence. Yeah, set his feet. Because you see, he wasn't looking at the line when he was doing that. He just felt the presence and was like, oh, there's a way out. See, there he is again.
Oh, I think it's the same. Is it the same or different angle?
Yeah, that was the same play. Yeah, I think Thielen's looking to beat the Vikings.
Well, I think the Vikings quarterback, having been sacked a couple of times, he's probably a little bit more shaken up or mentally.
Yeah, I mean that's the goal, right? So they're blitzing right there is to put pressure on the quarterback to get him to make a bad decision. That's offensive pass interference. I don't know if they'll call it.
There's a flag.
Yeah, but they might call
Does
it.
does the complaining by the players help at all? Draw attention to stuff?
I don't know. I think like complaining, right? See him hold him.
Yeah. Oh, he was looking at him when he threw the flag. See it?
Yeah, see he's pushing off. He's grabbing onto him. It probably won't help right then to get the call. But if you're like, ref, he is doing this every single play, they will kind of look at it. But you don't want to be whiny to the ref either, right? To where they just ignore it even if it does happen. I mean, they're humans, right? So they're going to...
Get out of my face.
Yeah. But they're evaluated every week too. So I mean, it's not like they can do a lot of that. You got to mute it. We don't know what the call was.
Oh, yeah.
That's okay.
Been trying to mute it during the commercials.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, the way he lands on his shoulder and his head, the receiver, and then bounces up. That's like, ooh, and actually someone landed on him.
Yeah, so
That's
like
brutal.
If we were to go do that right now, we would be...
In the hospital?
Yeah, we would be hurting, right? But that's your practices, and you're banging up against each other long enough that you get in game shape for that, where you're used to being hit like that. Like I know when we would do 2-a-days and things like that, my arms would just be like all bruises. It looked like somebody had just beating on my forearms, beating me up. And then once the season comes, that doesn't happen anymore. You just don't bruise. It's like your body is used to that.
Like calluses?
Kind of.
No,
But
right?
you're used
Yeah.
to those,
Yeah.
You're used to those collisions and stuff, so you don't even think about them.
Oh, did he just grab his face? That was a big dude with nobody to hit.
Yeah. So he was illegally downfield. He was a lineman that was too far down the field. So your lineman on a line can't go on a pass. Can't go on the other side of that blue line. I think they have a yard of leeway, right? But
Yeah.
he went way out there.
And the purpose of that rule is? It seems like a weird rule.
Well, because then you'd run your offensive lineman down there with them to block
Oh.
for your wide receivers, and it just muddies things up. I mean, it's already a chess game between everybody. If you could move those, that's just the way that piece moves on the board.
Oh, he just got that done there for the play clock. Oh.
That's what the Vikings needed. Run. I think
Oh,
that's the
that's
same guy that
that
batted that ball down. Touchdown Vikings. Remember when he jumped up and
and hit it with his hands? Same guy?
Dream? Yeah, I think it was the same guy.
Well, that can rejuvenate a team.
Yeah. Like I said, those big plays are huge momentum things. You can hear the crowd.
No flags.
Nope.
So, what he just
You can see this guy's right in his face, freaks him out.
Oh,
like you were
okay.
saying.
Yeah, he brought it in and it hit his stomach. It looked like, and
Yeah, you got somebody in your face looking to take your head off. It's like that makes you think.
well,
Twice.
it looked like he tucked it and it came in tip. The point hit him.
It's like walking and chewing gum, right? I mean, see how further back they were for that
Yeah.
extra point, where it used to be right up on the
It's
three.
still amazing that it's right up the. I mean, it's a few feet to either side every time.
Yeah. Yeah, when I was playing, I mean, the kicker, it's like we would have to line up in front to block for that. You get kick, and it would just go right up your tailbone. And it was, like an enema, you know? And you're like, come on, man. Like, you got to be better than that. We had a female trainer that tried out as a kicker. And 80% of the time, she was pretty good. And she was kicking barefoot. But there was just those every once in a while where it was like right up your rear. And you're like, come on, man. Like,
Well, and that's got to stick in
be
your
more
mind when
consistent.
you're,
Absolutely.
you know,
Because you're like, well, one, can I trust her to kick it? She played a couple JV games, and then I think she just decided she wasn't going to do that anymore. But yeah, which was pretty revolutionary back in
yeah,
the early 90s.
that was.
And we were all like, yeah, if she was any good, we'd have no problem with her. It was just, you know, she was only good from super close in and stuff like that. But
What I forget? Did you say was she a soccer player?
I don't know. She was a trainer.
Oh,
She may have played soccer. I don't know.
I thought at least back in the day, sometimes they would use soccer players because
Yeah.
to kick footballs.
Where they changed to that soccer style kicking that they're all doing now,
Yeah.
where they're like go and they're offset.
It was like
and
3
kick
steps
it with
back, 3 steps over, or something like that.
When they
Yeah.
kick it with their instep instead of kicking it like their
The
toe.
flat, yeah, they used to have a special flat shoe
Yeah.
back in
That
back in the day.
That was our kicker when I was playing in college, kicked like that, and he had a special shoe. And we were just like, really? I mean, even then, it was like the soccer kicking was pretty much there to stay.
Right.
And I was like, this is what we're going to. I mean, he was decent kicker. He did pretty good whenever our offense could move the ball to where he had a chance to kick it. But
Now, when they're kicking for a field goal, it's offset one side or the other. Do you get to pick, or how do they?
no, so it depends where the last play ended. So if the last play ended, so you have your hash marks.
Yeah.
If it was somewhere in between those hash marks, then it started in the middle of the field. And if it was on the outside, then it ended on that hash. So wherever they're tackled. And you can see how narrow the hashes are there.
Oh yeah.
And in college, they're much wider.
And that was a good kick because it bounced and then went out, and they're far back into the.
Well, it doesn't allow them a chance to return it.
Oh, but they come out to like the 25. Okay.
Yeah. And that, I mean, like I said before, it was the special teams that was causing all those injuries. So it's good to get out of that where you're not having people colliding and stuff like that when you kick it out of bounds. So that's when in that podcast they were talking about, are we even going to do kickoffs anymore? You just start at the 25 every time. But they're going to be electric. Like with Devin Hester, he would, once he found a seam, man, he was fast. Well, now Vikings defense is coming to play.
They're excited again.
Yeah, they got the lead. They got a chance to win.
It's amazing the different helmets. I never noticed how many different helmets there are.
Yeah, it's a real. I think it's player preference now on what kind they have. Like Patrick Mahomes' helmet, if you look at it, it's a weird shaped helmet. Makes him look weird on the field. But that's the one he likes.
Well, you can protect the noggin.
Yeah. Yeah, probably 25 years ago or so, I went to maybe anyway, right around there. It was a conference on brain injuries, and they were talking about like one of the NFL's top concussion guys at that time was there, and he was talking about concussions and things like that, and like they would have those pads on the helmet, and he's like, it's not any difference. It's just a matter of like that collision. It's not really how hard it is, but how the brain sloshes back and forth,
Right.
and how it mashes up against the skull. And
Well, and there's been some studies that I've heard about during my podcast that I listen to about they've shown that as they've made the helmet more protective and the pads and everything better, that the players have adjusted and they start hitting harder
Yeah.
or and then they have to adjust the rules to say, no, you can't lead with your head or,
Yeah,
stuff like
there's
that.
people that advocate going back to the leather helmets because
Right.
then you'll naturally protect yourself. Where as you'll throw your head around and because you're not worried about it, the head is
Well, I
safe.
mean, like rugby. I mean, slightly different sport, but the concussions and whatnot in
Yeah.
rugby are substantially less because you know
Well, and that's where, like, with all this
there's also more grappling and
concussion stuff and things, tackling has changed. So, like, when I was playing, we were taught to, put your head right in the center of the guy and, your forehead and take him down. So that was those big hits and things like that.
Yeah.
And now they do rugby tackles where it's to, like, wrap them up and then roll and bring them down that way. It's much safer for everybody to do it that way. Which is, we were just talking about business and stuff like that. It's about changing, right? You got to adapt.
Right, right.
I mean,
Well,
your players are your $1 million resource.
exactly.
You spend all
Limited
that
resource.
money, yeah, but you spend all that money to draft a guy and do all that. You want him to play. You don't want him on your injured or injured reserve or anything like that. You want them out playing.
Yeah, it makes things a lot easier if you've got your if you can get the full 4 years out of them and
Right. Well, so Aaron Rodgers was the quarterback of Green Bay. Do you know him or
Yeah.
heard his name?
he's still playing, isn't he?
Well, kind of. He moved to New York to play for the Jets.
Okay.
And in his fourth play, he ruptured his Achilles tendon. So he's out. So they spent, all this money to get him there. They built a team around him,
Yeah.
his throwing style, things like that. And, so they're stuck like, well, what do we do now? He's out. How long is he out?
Right.
So, I mean, that just killed Jets fans because, they're like, oh my God, we're going to win a Super Bowl. And now they're back with their quarterback that can't win games. And for whatever
He's
reason,
got all
they're
that new
sticking
age
by him.
medicine. He'll be right back.
Well, they've said he might be able to be back at some point this season, which is just,
Crazy.
yeah. I mean, when you think about the injuries and stuff, again, things that have changed over our lifetime, right? Where,
I remember kids
How
in
quick they
elementary
come
school they'd break their arm on the playground and they'd be in a cast for months.
yeah,
Like a long time. And now, but then on the opposite side of that, growing up, I think in elementary school I knew like 3 or 4 people that had braces. But when my kids were going to school, it's like everybody had braces.
Yeah. well, it was more important to, not have.
Well, I think it's probably come down a little bit, and I think also maybe insurance is covering it better,
Right.
or it's. I mean, I don't know. It was just a rare thing, and I think like I said, with my kids, almost all of their friends had braces at one time. Whether between junior high and high school, it would be different. Some would get them early, some would get them later, but it's.
Yeah, some would have them for a short time, others
Yep.
would have them longer, but yeah.
I see. He's got a whole like face mask.
Yeah, like a balaclava on.
Yeah.
It's got to be warm.
Well, I was going to say that.
Down in Carolina.
Yeah, they were just showing the stands, and everybody is like in t-shirts and whatnot. That's got to be. I wonder what that's for. We're not. I mean, it would be harder to breathe through, and hotter.
I mean, it could be like a cooling material and all that, but even still.
That would still be hard to breathe through if it was wet.
Yeah, because it's thick looking. It's not thin.
And it's just over his mouth. It's
Yeah,
not
he
over his
doesn't have it
nose.
Over his nose. Like he could pull it up that way, it looks like.
Yeah, that's weird. Must give him an edge. Keeps people's fingers out of his mouth or something.
That could be. Survival huddle.
Crazier
of the
things.
pile.
It's like the visors. I remember, they seem to be.
They're much better than when I was playing. I know there were a couple of guys that had those visors, and man, they looked cool. But any kind of
They're
rain
blind?
or they fogged up and stuff like that. Technology is way better now than what it was. But man, it looked cool. Plus, we had the big neck rolls back then and stuff like that nobody even has anymore.
on the back where it was behind you.
Uh-huh.
Was that supposed to keep your head from going backwards?
Yeah,
or-
but that's really where you want your head to go.
Right.
It's an offsides. So it's called a free play. So
They're probably going to take it.
yeah, so they're not going to take the penalty and take the touchdown. And that's exactly how you want that to work. You get that guy to jump off side, so it's a free play, right?
Right.
If you get sacked or whatever, the flag's going to wipe it out. You score a touchdown, you decline the penalty, you get a touchdown, just like here.
Yeah, that was a. Wait, they haven't updated the scoreboard yet.
No, they haven't.
It's kind of.
All touchdowns, I think, are reviewed. Maybe they're just reviewing it, but I don't know what's to review. Yeah.
Scoreboard person's on
Yeah.
a break.
They had to go potty.
They had to go get some nachos.
Their vape cartridge ran out.
It's probably that bubblegum flavored or that cotton candy flavor. Oh my goodness. It's like everybody I know that vapes at work, that's the flavor. And they'll vape in the office, and it's like, which is, you're not supposed to vape in the office. It's just like they consider it smoking. And you'll get this big whiff of it.
Yeah.
And they're just like, what? And I'm like, what? I go, you took a hit off your vape. No, I didn't. It's like, right. Okay, then who's got cotton candy in that? And it's always the big guys, right? These big, like, macho dudes. And I don't know what
That's big.
because they're big doesn't mean, just because you're big doesn't mean your stuff, has to be like, smell like smoke or something, I guess. But it is funny that's
like
the smell.
Sandalwood. And
Yeah.
There's
You're
a
a
gal in
manly
our
man. It's supposed to
building-
smell like feet.
There's a gal in our building that has 2 in each fist, and she like vapes like as she's walking, going in and out of the building. And it's like, girl, you got a problem.
Yeah.
Like, wow. And they're the like big old ones.
Oh, the big industrial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they look like blow torches or mini bongs even. And yeah, she's just, it's like, oh boy, that can't.
I wonder what's in them, what she's vaping, because there's so many different things
Yeah.
that people put in those.
I'm sure it's nicotine, but yeah, they're different flavors because I smell different things when I'm behind her.
Yeah, I was one of my coworkers. He vapes, and I talked to him about it, and I'm like, I know the science isn't there yet, but it's like I always told both of my parents smoked growing up, and my mom's like, well, we didn't know they were bad for you. I'm like, what did you guys call them? You guys called them coffin nails, right? That's not a good thing. I go, when you went camping, do you stand in front of the fire and when the smoke gets in your face, do you breathe deeply? No. You're like, oh my God, get that smoke. So like, that she's like, well, okay, it was cheaper than food. I'm like, okay, now you've got an argument for it, which that I don't think is any longer the case because I can only imagine what a pack of cigarettes costs these days. I think someone told me they're like $7 or $8 a pack.
Yeah, and I was talking to a kid about that I used to chew, and because she's given up vaping, and I was like, what I did that helped me is I tallied up the cost, and I go, and it was like $2,500, $3,000 in the 90s. I can't imagine what it is now for them to vape and how much that costs. And
well, with the batteries and the vape and
and the cartridges, and it just keeps coming.
And my coworker's comment was, well, that's risky. He picked it up on he was in the end zone when he picked it up.
Yeah, it's a gamble, right? Because you might break it big and go. The part about vapes that scares me, though, is how they put it in. Oh man,
isn't it glycerin or something like that?
Emollient or something. I forget the word, but it's where it like breaks down that solid into like a liquid form. How is it not doing that to the inside of your lungs, where it's like breaking them down?
My thing with it is you're putting water vapor or glycerin vapor, some type of vapor in your lungs. That's what leads to pneumonia. It's like you don't want fluid in your lungs. You want air, and then but again,
to each his own. It's everybody's got their thing, right?
Right. Yeah. I'm not going to run around and like, you can't double fist your vape if that's what she wants to do. That, I mean, she's a full grown adult. Like, who am I to tell her?
Yeah, as long as it's not impacting me. I mean,
Yeah.
I've got a neighbor that smokes cigars, and when it's nice out and our windows are open, it's like, oh, John's out having a cigar.
Yeah.
And even I have coworkers that are big cigar smokers, and even they're like, pipes can smell really good. But I've never smelled a cigar that was like a smell that was like, oh man, that's a good smelling cigar. So
I have.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I get that he's smoking them for the taste, and I did find out that he smokes them outside. I talked to some cigar people, even in the wintertime, be 3 degrees outside, and he'll go out on his porch and have a cigar. But the fresh air helps them taste better and burn better. Plus, also doesn't make your house smell
Right.
like a
Get that
cigar
film
smoke.
all
Yeah.
over and everything else. Yeah.
One of my other neighbor's house is for sale. He passed away, and the house is up on the market. And the neighbor that lives next door to him, he's like, oh my goodness, people come out of that place, and they're like, how many people smoke there? It was just him.
Yeah.
But you never saw the guy without a cigarette.
Yeah.
So I mean, he was probably a 3+ pack a day smoker, and lived in the house for, I don't know. I've been here for 21 years. So, and he's been here at least that long. So,
My mom managed apartments, and we would clean apartments and paint them. You could tell the smokers from everything was just yellow. The ceiling, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's the inside of your lungs.
my dad ran a tavern for a couple of years.
Okay.
And it was exactly what
Back in the day.
Back in the day. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, if you were fancy, you were drinking bottled beer. I mean, it was hard liquor and draft beer. That was what your choices were. Some people drank bottles, some drank, cans, but but they had the best pork tenderloin sandwiches. Their burgers were pretty good too. But one Sunday they were closed, and my dad brought the kids up to help clean. We're going to do a really thorough cleaning of it. And they had 2 fridges behind the bar. And there was a white one, and then there was an almond one. And so I washed the white one down, and I was just like, oh man, it's a lot brighter, And then I went to the almond one, and I sprayed it, and the color started running. And I remember even as a kid, I was just like, what's going on? And it wasn't an almond fridge. It was a white fridge, but it had been in the bar for so long. The nicotine and the tar which the worst case about that is now I had to clean the whole thing.
You're right. Yeah.
Because I had one clean spot. And when they reopened the following Monday, my dad was getting all this guff about, oh, hey, fancy, we've got a new refrigerator. And it's just like, no, it's not a new refrigerator.
Yeah, just cleaned it.
Just cleaned it. Yeah, that place was so bad.
I remember coming home from the bars, and you'd just take your clothes and put them somewhere separate. Outside would be best.
Yeah.
Because you'd wake up with your hangover the next morning, and that would make you go.
Yeah, I've gone out with the coworkers to some cigar places, especially like when the senior staff is back. We'll go to a cigar place, and I remember one time we were sitting in a hotel. Had just finished dinner, was sitting at the bar. They were watching the hockey game, and we were just sitting around talking. And someone's like, "Hey, let's go get a cigar." And everybody's like, "Yeah, no, yeah, And then the Yaz won, and the owner of the company's like, "Come on, Brian, let's go." I'm like, I'm gonna stay here and watch the hockey game with Pete, which, I don't know anything. I know less about hockey than I do. Actually, I know a little bit more about hockey because the rules are similar to soccer, and I kind of learned soccer a little bit when my boys were playing.
Yeah.
But I'm like, nah, I'm good. He's like, come on, let's go. And I'm like, so I texted my wife. I'm like, we're going to the cigar bar. She's like, I'll put a garbage bag out.
Yeah.
Because to that point, when we got there, not only 10 minutes after we were there, the owner leans over. He's like, yeah, we should have stayed back at the hotel. And I'm like, Now I stink.
Man. Yeah.
You know,
Thanks
because
for
we couldn't
nothing.
watch the game at the cigar bar. The air, it's like if you're going to do a cigar bar, you need to have some good air movement,
moving,
right? And be cycling that air out, putting fresh air. And this place just didn't have that. And I mean, I could have had a straw and just it'd been like smoking a cigar. But yeah, my wife was like, yeah, you need to strip down to just about nothing before you come in the house. And I think even then, when we washed my clothes, it was like 2 or 3 times I had to wash them before I could get the cigar smoke out.
Yeah. And growing up, that was just
Oh,
everywhere.
yeah.
Restaurants.
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember
Now
the.
it's like you go to a casino or something for something, and you're like, "Oh my god, what is that?"
Well,
it's
even
like, you used to not even notice it.
the worst are non-smokers. Like my mom now that she's a non-smoker. We'd be at a school event and someone would step out and have a smoke, come and sit next to my mom, and my mom would be like, "Oh, they smell so bad." And I'm like, "Hello, for 30, 40 years you smoked." Oh, Davenport.
Must be a good kid.
Must be. I keep unmuting it when we get to the commercial
Right when
breaks.
the commercials come.
Yeah, but that's all right. It's just the ambiance.
Yeah. Yeah, those were good times back in the day, though. Because I smoked for a while,
Right.
but mostly chewed. And I have a picture somewhere. It was on a camp out with some buddies. We were going whitewater rafting, and I was making breakfast, and I had some Skull in one lip and some Red Man on another dip or other lip, and smoking a cigarette while making breakfast. Because my friends were like, "What are you doing? Do you need an IV of nicotine to get that in there?" It was like, yeah, it was bad there for a while.
Well, I remember growing up to where, one, everything was an ashtray, right?
Yeah.
So there would be.
I mean, in kindergarten, we'd make ashtrays to bring home to our parents.
Right.
Yeah.
But I remember, and this is probably why I never. I mean, I smoked like a little bit in high school, but not a lot. But like there would be. I talked earlier about how we didn't get pop a lot as a kid, so there would be a little like one last drink of pop in a bottle, and you'd go and take a swig of it and find out that there was a cigarette butt in the bottom of it, which that gets you to not like smoking real fast. I think I did chew for a little while, but my dad found out, and like one time he like hit me on the back or something like that, and I ended up swallowing it, and I was just like, yeah, okay, I'm not seeing the allure.
Yeah, I did it so long that I could gut it in certain situations. Although in high school, we were at a track meet or on the way to a track meet, and there were 3 of us, and we had a 5-gallon bucket, and that was our spitter.
Ugh.
I think it had some sunflower seeds in it or something. And so we're back there, and the track coach comes back to talk to us. We're just like, we can't talk, so we're just nodding, and then he leaves, and it's like we all bonk heads at the same time, just streaming all the spit, for the minutes that he'd been talking to us.
Well, that was the other reason why I was never big is like the guys that I know that chew, they've always got the bottle with them and they're always like spitting it. I'm just like, I don't want to have to carry around a pop bottle full of spit. And with the smoking, once it was like, oh, you have to smoke outside. It's like, it's 3 degrees outside. I'm not going to go out and have a cigarette. Oh, that was a nice play right up the middle.
See, they wore out that D line.
The Minnesota has definitely. I mean, they were at the beginning of the half, second half they were at 7-13, and now it's 21-13.
Yep. Yeah, that fumble recovery for the touchdown, huge momentum swing, brought them right back in it. They had a little spring in their step.
Well, and that's you were talking earlier about the play-by-play people, and I do get they have to talk the whole time, and they have to talk about the football game, but it's always so funny how wishy-washy and how quickly that team didn't come to play today. I was like, well, no, they did come to play.
Yeah.
I mean, they all came to play. These guys are professionals. But yeah, it's funny. And then how like, you know,
Well,
5 minutes later, they're saying the same thing about the other team because
Yeah.
the other team's, you know,
Or where they just don't allow, like, well, they can't do that, and like getting upset, like, dude, people make mistakes.
Right.
Like this wouldn't be any fun to watch if somebody didn't make a mistake and not cover a guy for a big touchdown, right? That the dude's wide open. Like if they weren't
Yeah.
making mistakes, it wouldn't be any fun to watch.
Well,
Because otherwise there would just be a stalemate all the time.
I was going to say, without mistakes, no one would score, right?
Yeah.
I mean, realistically,
Right.
if each team is doing it exactly what they're supposed to be doing when they're supposed to be doing it,
Assuming good coaching on both sides to
Sure.
know each other's tendencies and things like that. But
But I
yeah.
also feel like these guys have been playing football for so long. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like they kind of. I mean, I don't know. I've never played a organized sport, so I've never had a coach coach me that way.
So remember when you were talking about the number of asking like the number of defensive linemen that need to be on the line. So some teams will play where they have 3 defensive linemen and then 4 linebackers behind them, right? So in order to be a defensive lineman in that scheme, you have to do different things and be physically able to do different things than if there are 4 linemen on the line and 3 linebackers, or 5 linemen on the line and 2 linebackers, which probably doesn't happen much anymore. Because so it's like a whole different role that can happen, and that so sometimes you'll see a new coach will come in with a new scheme, and players that were really good before aren't so good anymore because now instead of being inside like they were used to, they're moved further out, so they're playing against different guys with different responsibilities, and they have different responsibilities. Like nobody is just free playing on this, even as a defense. They all have gaps to fill. So where the running back is trying to run, where they're trying to make that opening, so the defensive guys push them back. They're responsible for this opening, so they want to get there and they want to, at least if anything, be able to absorb the bodies so that the linebacker, who's just going to be a few yards behind them, to come and fill that space and make the tackle.
Which goes back to your, it works good in this with this system and not with, I can work in this system and not that system.
Right. And then you'll have situations where teams are bad and they stay bad because they keep changing coaches or keep making these changes. And so as a player, I mean, if you've ever heard like what the play calls are in the NFL, it's like a novella. I mean, it's a lot of words that don't make sense but mean something to each position a little bit differently, and what they'll do, how they're going to block it, what they're going to do for the play, things like that. So what if your language changes with a new coach? It's like learning a whole new language, right? Because you got to learn, okay, this word now means this. It might be the same word before, but now it means something different. And you want things to be so where you're not thinking when you're playing, that you're just playing. You know what to do, you know what you're supposed to do on any given play, and you're not thinking about it. Carousels of coaches coming in, changing things, makes it real hard for people.
I don't think I've ever heard a play called.
An NFL play call?
Yeah, I'll have to Google that, and I'm
Yeah.
sure there's some online.
I mean,
somewhere.
it's like ZY flex speed 99J473. I mean, it's just crazy. Like when you hear it on its face, you're like, I don't even know what that means. And like when I was playing, they were much shorter play calls, but it still told you what hole we're going to, what we're supposed to do. And each call meant I had to do something differently.
You're going to try and push one left or right or
Right. So like if the center's straight up on me, then I would make, or not the center, the nose guard straight up on me, then I might make some calls that maybe a guard's going to help me out to open this lane. Or it's just on me to move him, whichever way, and then the running back will pick. That was a lot of our plays, was that it's called zone read, where the whole line would like step one direction and we would just try to block everything this way. And then the running back would just kind of float behind us and wait for either to cut back against everything
Yeah.
or find a hole that would open up and just then hit it. And you got to have a decent running back for that. That's patient to wait for that hole to open and then zoom, hit it quick.
Ooh. Just short.
Yeah, it looked like
Look-
you went over it to me.
Yeah, the TV line, he was over it by like at least a yard.
A yard, yeah.
Yeah, maybe a
it's
yard
not
and a
even
half.
Close.
But then again, the guy's just talking. You know, he's doing it in real time. So
Right. He does. No, they have the yellow line on their monitor. Yeah, first down.
I wonder. I'm sure. I mean, they get ratings, but I wonder if people rate because you know it's sports, so there's numbers for everything. But like the play-by-play and the
Oh, like announcers and stuff?
yeah. I wonder if anybody's out there like, oh, that guy's, you know, he's wrong. I know a lot of people. I seem to know a lot of people that didn't like how Madden used to do it. They were always
Really?
Pretty
I don't
negative.
know. I liked him. I thought because he was just a little goofy. Him
Yeah.
and Pat Summerall, I thought were great.
they were like the A team for so long.
Yeah. And Madden just said goofy things that, I liked.
Well, he was
who
old school.
was it?
Didn't fly anyplace either. That was always famous.
Yeah. There was a former coach at Notre Dame who announced Hawkeye games for the longest time. Like ESPN or whoever would always send him to the Hawkeye games.
Was it the Z? No, he was the one that was the Iowa. Because I used to work in radio. We were, of course, an Iowa Hawkeye affiliate, and so I would have to listen to the games every weekend, especially if it was an early game. If there were later games, I didn't have to because my air shift on Saturdays ended before then. But when I was starting out, it was, which it wasn't bad. It's like, do you do like pre-recorded shows or do you have a football game? And the football game was different, but it was like the same announcer. His name was Z something, I don't remember.
For the Hawks radio announcers,
yeah.
there was Gary Dolphin
Gary Dolphin
and Ed Podolak for
Okay.
a long time.
Must have been Gary Dolphin. I don't know where I was getting the Z from, but yeah, I remember hearing
Yeah.
their voices.
But he was on ESPN, and it was like everybody just hated him. Like my Facebook feed was full of, like, oh my God, this guy's terrible. I wish I could remember his name. So I'm sure ESPN is seeing that. I'm sure people are emailing and calling and whatever else to ESPN to let them know, like, oh, this guy's terrible.
Well, and I can't imagine personally prepping for this. I mean, because they have to watch tape, just
Yeah.
like they have to know each team, and
Their numbers, their names. 'Cause
Their-
not all teams have their names on the back.
and then their history. It's like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, he was injured back in 2002 or what,
Yeah.
whatever.
Some of that is
Being fed to them.
Producers, yeah, and it's being
Yeah.
fed to them. But yeah, some of that is just recall because all during the week they know which
Oh,
game they're going to
I'm
call.
sure they have sheets and sheets of information in front of them.
Yeah.
But you still have to go get it. You're
Well, I'm sure somebody gives it to them
Yeah.
for like a big organization. But if like you and I were going to try to do it, we would have to go get it.
yeah.
And then we'd have to read it how many times until you knew it. And then as soon as this game's over, you got to forget it and move on
And that's the
to
hard
whoever you're doing next.
that's the hard part of like doing like high school or even college, because there's just you don't have the team giving you the information, but also, I mean, what your filler conversation.
yeah.
Here, I mean, these people some of them are very famous, some of them are slightly famous, but there's, side stories you can tell about them, and, like they're in the news.
Right.
Oh, 2-minute warning, 21-13.
Yeah, like I think one of these one of these announcers is a former tight end for Carolina.
Oh,
I think it might be him. So he'll tell stories of like when he was playing, and he'd be like, those players are more knowledgeable of, oh, this guy needs to be doing this on that play. He needs to read this, because it's not always like when you call a play like the running back, they're not going to run a specific route. So it'll be the same as I was talking, like to block somebody, right? Like where he's at is going to determine a lot of what we're going to do.
yeah.
What kind of front they're showing us. Same for the receiver, right? So if the defender is like right on them, they might do something different. If they're back and maybe to the outside, then they have to do something different than what they normally did, or other people on the defense and what they're doing. So when they're running, they got to have their head up, see what's going on, so they can run the route that the quarterback's going to expect them to run because the defense did this. So sometimes you'll see where the quarterback throws the ball and there's like
Nobody
right
there.
into a defender, and there's nobody on his team there to catch it. It's generally the wide receiver didn't see what the quarterback saw. Which is, it's like you're running full speed. And
Right.
You got to be thinking
Yeah.
and seeing the same thing as somebody else.
I mean, you got to know how you got to know how your quarterback thinks too.
Right.
You
And
know,
what kind of throws they make and where they make them. And yeah, absolutely. Yeah, to do it. But I mean, they practice.
right?
Quarterbacks will practice longer with receivers so that they get to know each other. Because, you get some receivers that are faster than others. So you would throw to them differently. Like you see him open now, I need to throw it further because this dude's faster.
Right.
And I don't want him to break his stride. I want him to catch it in stride.
Don't slow down. Don't have to stop.
Well, no, because the defense will catch you then when you have to stop. But if you can throw a guy in stride, then he can just keep running. He's already beat the defenders, so he can just keep running until he hits the end zone.
We've not done a good job of eating the food that was laid out
No,
before
it's
us.
hard to talk and eat at the same time. I mean, I'm hungry, but it's like this food looks fantastic.
Yeah, well, it usually
Of course,
is.
Megan made it, but
Just for after the game, post game.
yeah. While we chat when the game's done, we can
Right.
fill our mouths.
The oh,
Did you catch it?
no,
Nope, incomplete. See him waving his hands like that?
Yeah.
That means incomplete.
well, I saw that number 20 had got it off of a bounce off of somebody. So
It
worst
can
case,
bounce off a person. It just can't hit the ground. So, see, get your hands up.
yeah. Well, he's so much taller than the quarterback anyway. I mean,
Yeah. My junior year, because I'm like 6'3", right around 6'3", and our quarterback was, I don't know, 5'4" maybe on a good day, but he had a cannon, but he couldn't see. He always had to like roll out to the side,
right.
because he just couldn't see what was going on with all the big
Whoa.
bodies in front of him.
Yeah, it's amazing how quickly the pace of the game changed.
Yeah.
I mean, unless Minnesota's known for being better in the second half. I don't know if that's a trait or
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with now Minnesota with that running game is they're on the field longer, so your defense can rest. And then because if your defense is out on the field all the time, they get demoralized, one, because the offense isn't doing anything.
Right.
But two, they're just getting tired. But when they can rely on their offense and they've got a nice lead, then they can really get after it. You're just in a better headspace then, too. Well, there's a minute 10 left in the game, and you're near the goal line, so you're
which it'll be another half hour before the game's over.
Maybe.
For a minute 10.
But it's a real gut check time for that defense, right? Because if they can stop them,
Right.
make them have to kick a field goal, or even if they try for it and don't get it and lose the ball on downs, that's huge. That guarantees
pretty much the game. Yeah. Yeah, that's
Depending on the timeouts
they,
Carolina has and things
they've
like
got
that.
2 more. I don't think that this is the first one that they've taken. So, see, I do know some stuff. It's just
Yeah.
very, very high level. I don't understand the intricacies, and maybe that's what I'm not used to. Is like, usually when I do things, whether it's home improvement or my job or whatever, I usually have a depth of knowledge.
Right.
I'm that generalist where I know a little bit of a lot of things, but when it comes to football, there's definitely a gap.
But I think there's lots of fans that don't have a depth of knowledge, but just watch the game and still have fun, right? Like their team has an NFL team, so they're a fan and they've watched 100 games, so they've picked up certain things, but they might not have like the depth and intricacy knowledge of different things, but they know their team
Right.
backwards and forwards. Which is big. You should watch that. Kelsey on Amazon Prime.
That's what's that one about?
It's about a Philadelphia Eagles center,
Okay.
and it's
Who has a brother who's a quarterback?
who's a tight end.
Tight end, okay.
The one dating Taylor Swift.
Okay, right.
It's
Okay.
his brother. So, but it's really good because it's a look into they made it to look at the inside process of a player getting ready to retire, and he decided to stay on, but it was still so good that they showed it anyway. But it just gives you an inside look at his life and kind of his relationship and things like that.
Oops, wrong button.
What'd you do?
Instead of muting it, I changed the input. Yeah, that'd be something that I could watch next time I'm flying someplace. Those are good shows for me.
Yeah.
When I'm stuck on a plane and
Absolutely.
and have limited options on what to do.
Yeah, you can download that to your phone or a tablet
Yep.
or something and watch
Yep.
it.
It helps me deal with my.
Stacy liked it too, so
Oh.
it's not like you have to be a football person, because it's more about relationships and his value and things like that.
Well, it's. I mean, I think it's a little odd for a center to be getting that type of attention.
Yes.
It's not a position that's normally.
Part of that is Philadelphia, just its town itself, and they kind of explain it in the beginning. But when they won the Super Bowl a few years ago, his speech to the city is really like where the city loved him. But I think they loved him before that, but it's like solidified that. And what he wore and things like that. I don't want to ruin it because it's kind of funny. But yeah, his jersey was like the most sold to women in the NFL. Also because some of the work that he's doing and, charity work and side projects and things like that. But he's very popular for a lineman. Most linemen don't really have their face out there.
So, just over a minute left. Someone's going to get their first win of the year on this one.
Oh, that's it. Nice sack.
He came from a long way around, too.
Yeah. He's probably a corner coming from that outside. Yeah, so they have 57 seconds. So the Vikings just have to kneel essentially. And then
Because you've got, what,
They might
30
have to
seconds on the play clock?
yeah, but they'll call 2 timeouts. The
Carolina will.
use their 2 timeouts. Yeah, if they run a play, Yeah, they're going to run a play. 'Cause that's the best way to salt it away. If they get a first down, that's game for sure. But see, it took longer to run that play than if he just kneeled. So you're chewing up
Right.
some clock. Because there's no way Carolina doesn't take that timeout. Or maybe they'll. Yeah, they took it. And this is the part of the game where I don't always.
Stick around for?
No. No, this you will because it's still kind of close. So
Okay.
things can happen, right? Even though they have the time, it's not definitely they could fumble. All kinds of things could happen.
Right. Because they have already.
Right.
Although I got to think they're going
But
to be
it's like
super safe right now.
Yeah, but the clock management part of it, right, is they have 53 seconds to burn.
That'll be the last play.
No, because they'll call their last time out.
Oh.
So it's third down, so they'll run a play and have 35 seconds. They might have to punt. And that's why they call the timeouts, because they have a chance to get the ball back. It'll be with a handful of seconds
Okay.
where they can throw those Hail Marys and
Right.
things that you were talking about.
Yeah, the only reason I said the one about the Hail Mary is it looked like they just were lobbing it in
It was
there.
just so deep and
you
there were so
know.
many people there.
Yeah. It's like hopefully somebody's down that way. Still curious why he was wearing a face mask.
Yeah.
All right. You think?
Maybe he's
Oh,
got
okay.
COVID.
Yeah. I'd say there's no point in running the clock down because
Yeah, because the game
'Cause
clock
it
was
doesn't start.
stopped. Yeah. So that's perfect. So even though there's like a second differential, the punt will be the end of it. And they could take a delay of game and then run a play even.
delay of game is usually a loss of yards or
Yeah, you lose 5 yards, I think. But yards don't matter right now.
it's going to be the hard part, losing. I mean, Super Bowl would be a lot worse than this. Obviously, they've lost 3 times, but they don't want to lose a 4th. But you know the camera's on, so you have to just sit there and be like, just another day at the office. It's a crappy day, but it's another day.
Yeah, but I don't know. You got to kind of take it personal. Otherwise, it gets real easy to lose. If you look at it as like, oh, just another day. at
Well,
the
no, I
office.
mean that's what you have to be doing externally.
Oh, yeah.
Internally, yeah, you're
yeah,
all
you
over.
can't be throwing a tantrum
Yeah.
and do all the things that you want to do.
Yeah, can't be kicking water bottles and
Right.
punching coolers and stuff.
And even those guys are generally hotheads, and you're not really looking for that anyway. Yeah, so now it's
There you go. We helped the Vikings win a game.
finally. Hopefully they can start
What was that?
rolling again.
What was he really complaining about?
Oh, he's probably saying it because there was no receivers
No.
there when he threw it out. But he was outside the tackle box, I think.
Well, he went back a little bit, but
No, you can go back a million yards. It's just you have
you
to
gotta go to the side. Well, I mean, but that, yeah, I don't know. Being out there and complaining about that seems a little,
Yeah, but it's I don't know. I got a penalty for trying to. I was started punching the kid, trying to get him to fumble, but he was already down, and then I was just mad at the way we were playing, so I just kind of waylaid into the. I mean, I was around the area of the ball, but I was just punching away like crazy. Got a penalty called, and that was the end of the half, so it affected our kickoff on the second half. But I mean, the coaches came in at halftime and they're like, "Y'all should be showing the effort like Chris," and because I was mad, and it's that whole culture, right?
trying to get the
of not being happy with being behind, and
Right.
playing a certain way, and yeah.
bonus coverage.
Yeah,
I'm
this
just
is-
waiting to see if they get back to how your Rams are doing. And
Oh yeah, but
Oh, see, it completely distracted you. Oh, that guy.
I'm used to not seeing them because
Oh,
how many
right.
Rams fans are there in Iowa?
Well, and they're tough to be able to watch without.
23-15.
Ooh,
3 minutes 12 seconds. Indianapolis has the ball.
that's not good. They're 20-0
And
last
it's
time
an
we checked.
8-point lead, right? So Indianapolis would have to score and get the 2-point conversion
To tie
to
it.
tie it, and then the Rams still have the ball.
With how much left?
Well, it's 3 minutes and 2 seconds right now. But the Colts are on the 5-yard line. They're close to scoring.
Oh, I think they took us to the Eagles game.
Yeah. And that's him, 62 right there. That's the guy who I'm telling you to watch. It's about him. And, of course, it involves his brother, right? I mean, he's also an NFL player.
Right.
And that
right.
was a big story from the Super Bowl. They played against each other in the Super Bowl. It's the first time ever brothers had played against each other.
That's got to be
Talking
crazy.
about after the game, when you lose, your brother wins. Like,
Yeah.
Oh, that's just terrible.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that would make it better or if that would make it worse. Because you want to be happy for your brother, but at the same time.
Yeah, it's like you're happy for your brother, but all the work you put in,
Yeah.
all that stuff is like you're also
Yeah.
upset too that
Well, that's what I was saying. I mean, I don't know if that's better or worse, because if you lose, then you get to be mad about all your time. You don't have to be happy for the other team. But if your brother's on the other team,
yeah.
that hit him in the face.
Oh my gosh. I thought the defender stopped that.
I did too. His hands were wrong.
Well, he closed his hands, not even anywhere near the ball. So you can call that alligator arms, where his arms get real short because he hears the footsteps of the defender coming. He's worried about getting hit.
So, jeez.
That was a good play by that wide receiver. Otherwise, that would have been a pick for sure.
Well, and the height that he got to jump over them.
Yeah. Well, he
And-
told him what he was doing. The quarterback, he was pointing up.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to chuck this high.
He's like, okay.
And then the
And
defender
it was short.
got in front of him.
Oh. I don't know. It looked like he didn't catch
He
it
could have
anyway.
caught it, yeah. Well, he's a defender, right? I mean,
Right.
that's
Not
his job. So he doesn't have his near.
well. Yeah, his teammate
practice
running
reps.
into him probably didn't help much either.
No. What's he doing? He called a fair catch. That's a penalty.
Is he saying he didn't? He's saying he didn't.
I saw him do it. His hand was way up, waving. You know what the fair catch means?
Well, it means he's just gonna. They're just gonna take it at the 20, or he can't. He's not gonna run.
That's a fair catch right there. He called it. No, a fair catch means you're going to take it right there at that spot.
Okay.
So you're not going to run. But he took off running afterwards. That's a penalty.
Now he's laughing about it.
You know, the coaches aren't going to be laughing.
Right. Well, I don't know what he was. If he was swatting at a fly or what, but
Yeah, up here.
something was in his eyes. It was in my eyes. I was saying hi to Mom. All right, I'm going to call it. This was 2 hours, almost 3 hours.
Yeah, it's a fun time. Thanks
Yeah.
for having me.
No problem. I enjoyed it. We'll see if we'll get it put up on the interwebs and see if anybody else likes it.
On the internet.
On the internets. We're all out of internets. We'll have to order some more. But yeah, we'll see if we do this again.
Cool.
I think it's time to eat. Get something to drink. Gonna get all warmed up. All right. Well, if you do listen to this whole thing, thank you very much. Leave us a comment down below. And yeah, we'll do it again. Bye.